Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this December 5th, 2016 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Happy holidays to everyone, and certainly thanks for coming out on a snowy evening. Drive home safely. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll go ahead and ask Brian Muldoon to lead us tonight. Thanks very much, Brian. We have 3 presentations tonight. We're going to start with an update on our City Hall and parking structure project, which I'm sure while you all are here tonight. And that's from Mike Cronquist, the owner's representative on the project, who's been doing a great job for the city. Is Mike here?
Mayor, Mike became ill today,
oh boy.
So I told him I would stand in for him. You have his report on page 119 of the packet. I can answer any questions on that. We did finish our third and final last big pour of concrete, so all the ramps are done. That's now as high as it will get for the people who are wondering. And they tensioned the post-tension cables on Saturday after the concrete had cured sufficiently and it had sufficient strength. One aspect that I just learned about today, when they did those post-tensioning, which you're putting tension on the cables that are in the concrete, 2 spalled or broke off concrete at the edges as they were tensioning them. So they were at a conference call with the engineer for Kimley Horn today, and they've come up with a solution. I think they were going to have to cut out some of the concrete and re-pour it, but I don't know the details on that. But it did not appear significant that 2 of the cables had spalled or broken off at the very ends of the cable, broken off the concrete. Other than that, it's about 70% complete. The City Council and Mayor did a tour of it last Wednesday, and they're taping, all the drywall is up on the 2nd floor, and they're taping the drywall on the 2nd floor of City Hall, and they're hanging the drywall on the 1st floor of City Hall while the plumbers, electricians, and others continue to work. Coming up in the near future, they'll pour some of the side walls in the parking structure, and then continue on the work in City Hall with some of the finish work, including painting, cabinets, etc. But it looks good to occupy next April. Whether it's the beginning of April or middle or late April, we're still figuring it out, but that's where we are right now.
Thanks, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck Stearns on the City Hall update? Thanks again for organizing the tour last week. The building's coming along very nicely, in my opinion. We will move on to, we have 2 proclamations this evening. I'm sure you're all here for the Arbor Day proclamation, which I will read first. And I'll begin with, whereas natural areas, trees, and landscapes provide not only community beautification, but also economic and environmental benefits. And whereas trees provide many benefits to the community, including air purification, windbreaks, noise reduction, shade, and energy conservation. And whereas planting trees and maintaining older trees provides an opportunity for community interaction, volunteerism, economic development, and environmental conservation. And whereas our efforts to improve the environment benefit present and future generations. And whereas Arbor Day in Montana is officially the last Friday in April. Be it therefore resolved, I, John Mulfeld, Mayor of Whitefish, Montana, do proclaim Friday, April 28th, 2017 as Arbor Day, and I encourage citizens to participate in appropriate activities and to take advantage of the benefits of the parks and other natural areas in our community. Thanks very much. And we will move on to item 3C, which is our second proclamation. And per city code, proclamations are typically declared by the will or the prerogative of the mayor But in this example, this proclamation is much different. I think many of you present here tonight approached your elected officials, encouraging the city to reaffirm our commitment to compassion, diversity, open-mindedness, acceptance, tolerance, and kindness, values that are universally promoted by the citizens of Whitefish. We are neighborly and a welcoming community. We want the world to know that our doors are open to all. Therefore, I deliver this proclamation tonight on behalf of not only the City Council, but on behalf of the entire community of Whitefish. I will now proceed with our city's proclamation rejecting racism and bigotry and promoting tolerance and non-discrimination in the city of Whitefish. And I do know that several councilors would like to provide comment when I complete my proclamation. Whereas recent local and national news stories have identified the city of Whitefish as the part-time residence of a self-proclaimed white nationalist and a founder of the so-called alt-right movement. And whereas on the first day of December 2014, in these chambers, the City Council of the City of Whitefish, with overwhelming public support from many of you here present tonight, unanimously adopted Resolution 14-57, taking a stance in support of the community values that recognize the dignity of all persons and welcoming diversity and inclusion for all of its inhabitants and visitors. And whereas on the fifth day of April 2016, the City of Whitefish, again with overwhelming support, unanimously adopted Ordinance 16-07, an ordinance establishing a civil rights policy prohibiting the discrimination on the basis of actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity and expression. And whereas the City of Whitefish is a self-governing municipal government operating pursuant to its charter and the laws of Montana, recognizes and embraces its responsibility to promote equality for all of its citizens and all of its visitors. And now, therefore, as the mayor of the City of Whitefish, I proclaim that the City of Whitefish repudiates the ideas and ideology of the white nationalists and so-called alt-right as a direct affront to our community's core values and principles. The City of Whitefish rejects racism and bigotry in all of its forms and expressions. The City of Whitefish reiterates again its commitment to the values, laws, and programs, including our own Resolution 14-57 and Ordinance 16-07, honoring the inherent worth of all people, regardless of race, creed, national origin, sex, or sexual orientation. The City of Whitefish will continue to honor its responsibility to promote tolerance, non-discrimination, and diversity within our community. And I will sign this evening on the 5th of December, 2016, as the mayor of the City of Whitefish. Thank you very much for coming this evening. I would like to acknowledge Councilor Sweeney, who's been instrumental in both the crafting and the ultimate adoption of both our resolution and our ordinance. And I thank him for his contribution to the proclamation authorship and turn the floor over to Frank for comments.
Thank you, John. I just want to offer one other thing. I was reading today, yes, in that national rag we call the New York Times, a gentleman by the name of Evan McMullen, who's the Chief Policy Director for the House Republican Conference and a former CIA officer offered us all the following comments. We must never forget we are born equal with basic natural rights, including those of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those rights are inherent in each of us because we are human. They are not because they are granted by government. Government exists primarily to protect those natural rights. We have to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. Further comments from the council? Richard.
To the public that's here tonight, I appreciate your affirmation of the proclamation that the mayor just read. You epitomize the community values that I think we all share. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you being here and continuing to support equality of all people in the city of Whitefish. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Richard. And again, thank you all for coming this evening and showing your great support. It's humbling. We will move on to communications from the public. This is time set aside for public comment for either items that are on the agenda but not advertised as a public hearing, or anything else you'd wish to bring to the attention of the council. And just for the record, your name and address when you approach the podium, please. Dick.
My name's Dick Zollner, 1365 Borman Road. I just came down tonight to, a couple weeks ago I had a septic tank pumped over on the east side up Sun River Canyon. It took the guy probably 2 hours just to drive up there. I asked him what he did with his sewage waste. He said he takes it to Great Falls, that's where he was from. They've got a 4-inch hub. He sticks his hose in there and discharges into the sewer lagoon, or into the treatment plant to get processed. Charges $35 is what the city of Great Falls charges him. He does not dump on top of ground like we do here. So I would just like to ask the city that anybody that's got a Whitefish zip code, that the new plant out there has a hub on there, and we take all our septic waste and we process it here instead of dumping it down on these sites like down on Flathead River on that cobbled ground and disking and think we're not doing any damage. And I talked to the county. I said, what do we look at a meth house and what do? We condemn that thing, and yet we take that waste out. They said it's a public hazard. We take that waste out of a septic tank and let it go loose on these sites. And I think the city of Whitefish for the new plant can put a hub there, and we should discharge into that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Who's next? Tony.
Howdy, thanks for having us. You had to listen to me a couple years ago, just as a citizen of Whitefish, talking about the Love Lives Here situation and the Richard Spencer situation. Tonight, I'm honored to be here representing not only the Chamber of Commerce as the chairman of the board of the Whitefish Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also representing the CVB of Whitefish with my friend Dylan here. And we just came up with a joint statement of support of your proclamation tonight, Mr. Mayor, so thank you very much. And so I'm just here to basically let you guys know that we as a community, with the council, with the chamber, with the CVB, are all on board with everything you're doing here. The Whitefish Convention Visitors Bureau and the Whitefish Chamber of Commerce have always supported a diverse and unified community based on mutual respect. We are proud of our city government proclaiming and reiterating Whitefish's core values of dignity, diversity, and inclusion of all its residents and visitors, while condemning ideologies, philosophies, and movements that discriminate and deny equality of human rights. We support the efforts of the local human rights advocacy group, Love Lives Here, who are working to highlight the inclusive values our community is built upon. Whitefish always has been and always will be a place where people feel welcome and with warm hospitality. So I just want to thank you guys for representing your community. This is awesome, and this is exactly what makes this town super special, and let's keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Dylan.
My name is Lisa Jones. I reside at 314 Blanchard Hollow, and I'm here to represent the Whitefish CVB, also known as Explore Whitefish as well. My contract includes public outreach. I am proud to stand with our city in making this formal proclamation so our community feels heard and our visitors feel welcome. While everyone is welcome in Whitefish, including Richard Spencer, we need to be clear Mr. Spencer's extreme ideology and current national media reach, citing his ties to Whitefish, do not represent the values of the Whitefish community. And this proclamation states that loud and clear, and I thank you for that. And I know many people are here to support this proclamation, but I know that many of them would not like to get up for public comment. So if you'd like to just show a show of hands of support, you could take that opportunity right now. Thank you. Thank you for standing up.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate the comments. Joan.
Can reach the mic. Joan Vetter, Ehrenberg, 744 Hidden Valley Drive. Thank you tonight. It's really nice to be here and see all these great folks in our amazing community. And when I moved here 25 years ago, when somebody was stopped on the side of the road, you pulled over and you helped them. And when somebody was down, you said, "What's going on?" and you helped them. And there's this thing called bystander intervention. Racism isn't gone. Bullying isn't gone. Discrimination isn't gone. So when you see something happening, engage, step up, get in there. If in your heart, oh, I don't know that person, she's spanking her child too much in the grocery store. There was a letter in the paper last week, and the person didn't say anything. And the kid, step in. That's all I say. So step up, step in, do what your heart says.
Thanks, John. Further public comment? Yeah.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jessica LaFerrier. I reside at 119 Lakeside Boulevard here in Whitefish. And I'm here because I heard that about this proclamation. I've never felt so proud of the city of Whitefish for taking a stance against racism. I am working with some friends in collaboration with the nonprofit Love Lives Here, who are co-sponsoring an event that we're putting on, which is called Love Not Hate. And the event will take place in Depot Park on January 7th. We will have speakers, live music, a hula performance, but the mission of this event is to celebrate the diversity that does exist in our community and to stand together as a community to reject racism. And so I would like to invite you all to attend our event. We would love to have the City Council present, and you, Mr. Mayor, in particular, and all the general public here that does stand for this issue, reject racism, and want to celebrate the diversity that does exist in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate the invite. Further public comment? Not seeing any. I will go ahead and close the public comments, and we'll stay with the audience. Any volunteer board reports from the audience tonight? Volunteer boards? How about the council? Richard.
Yes, of course. Bike ped notes. Discussion of the proposed bike ped path. There's a right-of-way just to the east of Texas Avenue. And while there was some discussion, do you want us to wait?
Sure, we can take a minute or two while people filter out. Thanks.
Maybe they wanted to hear about the bike ped committee. It was exciting. Thrill a minute. Wow, there are a lot of people interested in the bike ped committee. No. Anyway, there was some discussion early on about the arrows indicating a future bike path at the far end of a right-of-way that the city has, or an easement that the city has to the east of Texas. The decision was to go ahead and eliminate those arrows of future direction for a bike path at the end of that easement. But I think it's important for the record that we reaffirm, and the Bike Ped Committee wants a reaffirmation of the importance of retaining that existing easement on the east side or to the east of Texas Avenue. The Bike Ped Committee also approved the edits that are in tonight's packet on the master plan. The hospital is still working on a trail prescription, that is this deal where doctors write prescriptions for exercise, and the hospital is working on a grant for Tier 1 and 2 signs, maps, and brochures. And we're working on a trails program for the Baki Preserve. It'll be a quarter-mile trail within there and within that preserve. And the committee is going to send a support letter. And I encourage any members of the public who want to send a letter of support, give them to the Parks and Rec Committee that you support a quarter-mile trail in the Baki Preserve.
Thank you, Richard, for the update. Any additional volunteer board reports from the council? Not seeing any. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the November 21st special meeting? Andy.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented, with the exception of item C, which I would move to item 8D to be considered later in the agenda.
I'll second with a couple of questions.
Just for 1 second, Jen, just for the folks that are present, because I do see a few faces, that's related to the annexations of the 82.7 acres. So just so those that are here for that issue are aware that it's been pushed back on the agenda for discussion. Jen.
Item 6A, the minutes for the special meeting, I noticed they were from 5 to 5:30, but we had a work session beyond that. I'm wondering if we needed to note that in the minutes at all. So we had the special session meeting, it says 5 to 5:30. Do we need to add anything from the work session that we carried on? Okay. Great. And then we had edits to the resolution from Angie regarding the Whitefish Hotels Group's request to amend condition 22 that she provided to us on our desk tonight. So we would need to modify the approval to include the edits from tonight.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. Was there a second to the consent agenda in Andy's motion?
I did.
Jen, that was seconded by Jen Franson. Further discussion? Chuck?
The resolution, we're going to number that as 1660 because the annexation resolution was going to be 1660, but moves down later, then it'll have a different number.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously, which brings us to our public hearings tonight. We do have 4 public hearings scheduled. We will start with item 7A, which is a consideration of approving an application from Cottonwood LLC for a preliminary plat for a 22-lot subdivision referred to as Cottonwood, located at 709 and 711 Colorado Avenue, and this is on page 209 of your packet. Good evening, Wendy.
Good evening. So you have an application before you that is a preliminary plat for a 22-lot subdivision on 4.7 acres. 9 of the lots are sized to accommodate either duplex or single family, and the remaining lots are sized to accommodate only detached single family. Gross density over the entire site is 4.68 to 6.59 dwelling units per acre. The applicant is proposing to develop the plan in a single phase. Access to the subdivision is proposed off of Colorado Avenue. The applicant's proposing to construct a cul-de-sac designed to meet public street standards. The applicant is not proposing any open space areas and has requested the option to pay cash in lieu of parkland dedication. There is an existing single-family home located along Colorado Avenue, which will remain as part of the subdivision. The property is addressed as 709 and 711 Colorado Avenue. The zoning is WR2. It has residential surrounding it, as well as the ice den across the street and undeveloped properties to the east. The property is served by all public services and facilities. Staff noticed adjacent landowners, placed a sign on the property, published a notice in the pilot, and noticed advisory agencies. We did receive some comments, written comments, and they're part of your packet. We received comments concerned with the density, traffic, stormwater, and neighborhood compatibility. Subdivisions are reviewed according to the criteria set forth in the subdivision regulations as well as the zoning regulations. I'll just hit some of the highlights here. Again, access will be under a new east-west street that will end in a cul-de-sac, and it'll go all the way to the edge of the property, the eastern edge, so it could be extended at some point in the future. The original plan showed it offset by 19 feet from the Stumptown Ice Den on the west, but they have since updated their regulation, or their plan, so those roads do line up. Along Colorado Avenue on the west side, there's a shared ped bike path, and that's the only pedestrian access that's on Colorado Avenue. So again, their new plat updated that road to align with the Ice Den driveway, so the southern sidewalk on their road lines up with the southern sidewalk of the Ice Den driveway. So this makes for a slight curve in the road, but this road will, of course, be required to meet all city street standards and will be reviewed and approved by the Public Works Department. The applicant submitted a TIS, and the TIS found that the addition of the Cottonwood Estate project would not significantly affect the operation of the intersections and the corridors. The intersections will continue to operate within acceptable levels. The TIS did recommend some vegetation pruning at the intersection of Colorado Avenue and Edgewood Place, and they also recommended lighting the pedestrian crossing from this project across the street over to where the ped bike path is located. Again, the applicant did request a variance in order to not align these two streets, but they did come back and change their mind and decide to realign that road as recommended by staff. There are no mapped crucial wildlife habitat or daily seasonal migration corridors in the site. However, there are quite a few animals and deer we heard about at the public hearing. The developer will, of course, extend water and sewer, thereby minimizing any potential impacts to groundwater. The applicant did provide some groundwater monitoring last spring that does indicate some shallow groundwater along the eastern edge of this project. So this is going to be a challenge when they come to do their engineering, and the Public Works Department will work with them to carefully review the infrastructure plans to ensure that it functions correctly. The Public Works Department may require additional groundwater monitoring depending on the stormwater needs for detention and retention and other city standards. The original plan showed swales along the backside of the private lots, but when they went to update their plat, they took out one of the lots in the northeast corner of the development, and they're proposing to use curb and gutter to convey stormwater instead of using a swale along the back of the lots. In addition, they're proposing a pumping system that would send overflow to an existing stormwater system in Colorado Avenue. The installation of a pump is not typical. It is something that is allowed in the engineering standards, but they do have to get special permission from the Public Works Department. The only pump the city has is located in the Lakes neighborhood, and the Lakes has a very formalized homeowners association with paid full-time staff to make sure all their amenities and systems are working properly. So this could be a long-term maintenance issue for this neighborhood. And it's even more of a concern because there's fewer owners to spread out these maintenance costs, and their homeowners association will need to be very organized. As part of the street system, again, they have a cul-de-sac that dead ends on the eastern edge. They are proposing to they show a planter in the middle of the cul-de-sac. This isn't a typical feature that we see in the middle of streets, and it'll need to be carefully designed during the engineering review. Make sure the fire department can have adequate access, and snow removal can be a challenge, and then someone's going to need to maintain that landscaping. During the planning board meeting, there were some questions about installing a sidewalk on the east side of Colorado Avenue because there's only a sidewalk on the west side, and why we weren't requesting a fee in lieu of sidewalks. During the reconstruction of Colorado Avenue, Public Works indicated that there wasn't enough right-of-way to have a sidewalk on both sides, and so that's why they did the larger one on the west side of Colorado Avenue. Under parks and open space, the subdivision regulations provide different options based on the amount of parkland dedication you're required to dedicate. If the dedication is 1 acre or more, it's a public park. If it's between 10,000 square feet and an acre, then we request a homeowners association park. And if it's less than that, we request cash in lieu of dedication. According to this application, the dedication would be about 17,000 square feet, which falls in the realm of the Homeowners Association Park. In May of this year, the Park Board unanimously passed a motion to recommend Cottonwood Estates provide a Homeowners Association Park. They wanted to see it be located in a part of the subdivision that it could be added on to some point in the future, you know, either in the southeast or the northeast corners. The applicant did submit a couple of drawings that are in your packet showing what those parks could look like. One was in the southeast corner and the other one was in the south central part where there were some trees. So staff is still recommending a condition that the Homeowners Association Park be provided. Let's see. Under solid waste, a question came up during the planning board public hearing concerning a centralized recycling location be located within the subdivision. Staff did visit with Roger at North Valley Refuse, and recycling for neighborhoods is just currently not available. He indicated we could certainly plan for something to be used in the future. Staff was concerned with unsecured garbage and recycling that could result in having a centralized recycling facility, so we contacted Eric Winham of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and he was concerned about having a centralized recycling area. He was concerned that there would be an animal attractant, and they're having so many bear problems in that particular area, so he was not in support of having a centralized recycling facility within a single-family residential neighborhood. Homeowners certainly have the option of contracting with an individual recycling contractor or taking their recyclables to the city's facility on Columbia Avenue. This project does comply with the growth policy. It is urban, which is a range of density of 2 to 12 dwelling units per acre. This certainly falls within that realm. It is an infill project because it is served by all public services and facilities. It's located within the city limits, which is a priority of the growth policy. Again, they did request a variance to our subdivision regulations, but then they eventually concurred with what staff had suggested, and so the subdivision variance request is moot at this point. The planning board held 2 public hearings on this matter. They held a public hearing in October and considered the request. The planning board unanimously recommended to continue it until November and requested that the Homeowners Association they asked for some changes and some additional information. The planning board wanted to see a Homeowners Association Park be shown on the plat. They wanted additional stormwater information, and they wanted to see the road, how it would look to be realigned. The planning board reopened the public hearing in November to review the new information. Following the hearing, the planning board unanimously recommended approval subject to the 19 conditions in the transmittal letter that you have before you, and they did deny the subdivision variance. At the October public hearing, 2 members of the public spoke, and they were concerned about stormwater, groundwater, and traffic. At the November public hearing, 3 members spoke, and they were concerned about traffic, density, neighborhood character, and off-site ice den parking. In addition, the Parks and Recs director spoke and continued to support the Homeowners Association Park, and all those comments are in the packet as well. So then just to hit us highlights of some of the conditions of approval. Our standard condition of approval number 4, which is that the preliminary plat is subject to approval of the detailed design of all the infrastructure, the roads, the stormwater, and that the number, density, location, lots, buildings, all that is subject to change if they can't, meet all of our standards. So while you're seeing 22 lots today, we're thinking that they're going to need quite a bit more space for stormwater. It may not end up being exactly 22 spaces. And then in addition, we'd like to see some parkland dedication. So again, there could be a loss of some lots for that. Condition number 7, we do want to see a Homeowners Association Park in the amount of 11% of the area. And the park would be in the southeast corner. And when the park equals an acre, because of the adjacent developments, then we'd like to see that parkland get dedicated to the city. The new cul-de-sac would be fully constructed to the eastern edge of the property and signed future street connection. The final location and alignment would be determined by the Public Works Director. We want to see the roadway get realigned, of course, like some of the drawings we've been seeing with the iced in driveway. And we also like to see the applicant install a crosswalk, improve the sidewalk ramp on the Colorado Avenue bike side to the other side of the street, and ensure the crosswalk is well lit. If they do choose to put a landscaping island located within the center of the cul-de-sac, that landscaping must be maintained by the homeowners association. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Richard?
Did the boulevard trees require, as now stated, irrigation?
I don't know if they do. Maybe Craig knows. The city street standards.
I don't believe we currently have a standard that requires irrigation. The city will maintain the trees, I believe, for the first 2 years, 1 year. And then after that, it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain the trees. So the city will water those trees during the first year of their new existence.
Or whoever the landscaper is, they'll install them and they warranty them for a year.
Okay, I'll bring it up with the applicant.
Further questions for Wendy? Frank?
Wendy, have we had any problems with the maintenance of the pump in the lakes?
That's Craig.
Not that I know of. It's entirely a private stormwater management system. And, you know, as Wendy alluded to, they do have a staff on hand that does maintain that system. I don't know internally what kind of issues they've had, but, you know, likely there have been some operation and maintenance work that they've done and some struggles to keep it running.
And this, as a follow-up, my question is, if we approve the use of this kind of a pump, regardless of the responsibility, at least initially with respect to maintaining it and operating it, who ultimately is liable for any failure and any failure that results in flooding that causes damages?
It would be the homeowners association. You know, our requirement of the covenants will be that they have, you know, bonding to cover any liability for failure of that system.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for staff? Chuck?
Wendy, I've got a question on condition number 9 about the cul-de-sac, and I'm going to kind of enlarge the cul-de-sac on this drawing. So, in order to allow the future eastern extension, there's this little triangular part on the north and south edge of the end of the cul-de-sac. So, those little triangles, are those going to be dedicated as right-of-way? Okay.
Yeah, it would have to be a 60-foot right-of-way.
Okay, because I have run into the problem in the past where just the cul-de-sac was dedicated as right-of-way. Those triangles were left in private ownership, and we could never extend the street in the future. That was not in Whitefish, that was in a different community, but as long as those little triangles are going to be right-of-way, we should be covered. I just wasn't that clear from the condition, so.
Yeah, we could clarify that, but that was my intent, that it would be a 60-foot right-of-way at that eastern edge.
Thanks, Chuck. Richard?
Yeah, one further comment. I noticed that in the folder that we received, and there was some discussion at the planning board level about extending the sidewalk all the way around the cul-de-sac. It does not show on the diagram we were given in this little packet, but is that to be created or constructed?
That was the intent. That's the city street standard, is that the sidewalk would go all the way around a cul-de-sac. Yeah.
Further questions? Thanks, Wendy. We did advertise for this application from Cottonwood LLC for a preliminary plat for a 22-lot subdivision called Cottonwood, and we will hold that public hearing now. Any public comment this evening? Just your name and address for the record, please. And I would ask the applicant if he is here to, if you'd like. No, okay. He's passing. Okay.
Would it be possible to hook up to the computer so that I could show a part of my presentation on the monitor? Yeah, go ahead. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Charles Lapp. I reside at 3230 Columbia Falls Stage Road, and that is in Columbia Falls. I am here tonight as representative of Cottonwood. We kind of called it Cottonwood Estates. We wanted to build it out as a subdivision, of course, because that's what it is, but just part of Whitefish, so we're just calling it Cottonwood for right now. And that's what we proposed the name of the road to be called, Cottonwood Drive. So, but we just want it to be part of the town of Whitefish. Also tonight with me, I've got Don Brummel back here. He will be the construction manager of the project. He was the one involved with finishing the Kalispell bypass last month. And so I think that he will be able to do a good job for us on this project. So as been talked about, and Wendy did a great job in her presentation, we agree with everything. There's no problems with any of it. The only issue that we have, and I'll address as a separate thing, is the issue of the parkland. And so as you can see, the location is right behind the ice dam, just to the east. This right here, it's a 5-acre, one of Whitefish's 5-acre parcels of the original town site. There's a whole bunch of them along there. Right there you can see how it lays back to the eastern edge. Right there is how it all lays in. This summer when I was out there mowing, I mowed some strips in between where the lots might be, according to the original plat that we had. So this is kind of how the lots would lay in there. This would be the road that comes back. Of course, there would be a cul-de-sac there at the back. And to answer the question about those little triangles, yes, it'll be a road right-of-way easement all the way. Well, actually, it'll be a road, yes, dedicated to the city all the way back there, so there won't be any problem with hooking on to it in the future. Now, I've given each of you a packet there, kind of a colorful packet, and I've just kind of touched on the highlights of Wendy's staff report, the planning meetings, and all of that, so it won't take me very long to quick run through this. The first page right there shows the plat as it's been changed as requested, and it's also shown here on this map right here. It's a little bit crooked at the entrance, and that goes to lining up with the ice dam driveway there. At first, the reason for the variance was that it was requested that the centers of those roads, the center of our road and the center of that ice dam driveway, be lined up. And we just could see that that was going to cause all kinds of problems. So that's why we had asked for the variance. So then as things changed and moved through the process, and it was suggested that just the south sides line up, that fits in perfectly. It's just a slight offset. The sidewalks will line up. We can put a crosswalk there. It'll all line up very well. And so the variance, while we couldn't take it off after we requested it, there's no need for the variance at all for that. A little bit, if you turn your page, the next page, it's the cross-section of the road that's been proposed. And if you look there where the sidewalks are and the boulevards and some of that, it says that some of it can be changed around. The width of the boulevards can be, well, it has to be at least, I believe, 6 feet is what it says. Yeah, very 6-foot minimum, out to however wide. Then, of course, the utilities go up on the lots in the easement prepared up in the lots. The issue with the cul-de-sac at the end, if you look in the next 2 pages there, I've got the public works standards where it talks about the pump stations and the cul-de-sac at the end with the planting strip. And, you know, the planting strip, not the planting strip, but the planting circle in the middle of the cul-de-sac, that was my idea. I thought it might be kind of cool there if the road ever extended. The cul-de-sac would be a permanent fixture there, and then it would just extend on, and it kind of be just, you know, kind of like a traffic slowing deal in the middle of the cul-de-sac there. But then my wife reminded me that there used to be one up here behind Glacier Bank on 3rd and Lupfer. I drove up there and looked, and I can see where the outline is still in the street, but it's been removed. So maybe that's not a good idea. and that can always be changed. You know, it's just something that we had suggested. As far as the stormwater and the stormwater pumping system, Let me move forward with this video just a little bit. And here again, you can see where it sits in configuration to the lake. Alpine Market is right here. This is Cougar Ridge right over here on this side. And then as we pan around here, Dugan's Way is right here. The upper part of Crestwood is right in here. And then, you know, of course, Crestwood drops down over the hill to the other side. And then when we were looking at this for the stormwater, and I understand that it's a challenge everywhere about the stormwater. So you can see how this right here lays in here, and you can see where I mowed back to the back right there. This property that we're talking about slopes 1% from Colorado back to the back of the property. So it's almost exactly 1%. It's 6 feet slope back to there. And then from the next piece, from the back of this subject property over to Texas Avenue, drops about 1.5%. So when we shot the elevations from the back of this property down to Texas Avenue, the road itself is about 10 feet lower than the back of this property. And then when we were shooting elevations with the transit, not with the electronic stuff, but actually looking through a transit, the back of this property is, the ground level is about the same height as this house right here in that subdivision down off of Texas. So it's that much lower. It's just about even with the top of that house. So there is quite a bit of elevation change here. So when people discuss about the water being present down along Texas and there being a lot of water down there, and there is, I mean, there's no doubt that ditch is full of water down there, but it's way lower. The bottom of that ditch is about 13 feet lower than the ground level up here. And so these test holes that we've dug, and the pipes are still in the ground, of course, and we monitored, they're all dry. When we dug them, they were dry. We installed a septic or sewer pump at the house, and it was all dry when we did it. And then in March, when the high water came up, it did come up, and there was some high water. It rose for about a week and then back down. I was checking them every week, and so it came up, and then it went back down. And by the end of May, I believe it was, maybe even the 1st of May, it was, the water was gone. And so, yes, there was water that came up, but like right now, they're all dry. All the test holes are all dry. So then, if you look through your book there a little bit more, when you get into the next part, it talks about density. And so what I did is I pulled up a whole bunch of subdivisions all around there. And so you can look through all of those different subdivisions that I've presented there. And I put at the top in the circled areas, you know, like this Maple Ridge one that was just recently done, 4.36 acres on 20 units. And so I just made a whole list of probably 8 or 10 subdivisions all around to show that the density of this subdivision really isn't that much different than what's been going on all around town. And this one we didn't, it's not a PUD, this is just straight zoning. There's nothing special that we've asked for or anything like that. And so the density is really not out of character at all with what's going on. This shot right here up on the screen is from over on Woodside. And this is actually the two subdivisions that I thought really looked appealing to the general public and the people that I talked to around Whitefish were Cougar Ridge and Woodside. And so those are the ones that we tried to emulate when we were doing it. Just nice rectangular lots, nothing special, nothing fancy, just a road that goes right up through the middle of them. The lots are wide enough so that people can do a front entry garage here, still have a nice porch along the side, or, you know, as we do the development of the infrastructure, we'll work with Public Works, of course, on this, you know, maybe doing some garages back behind, but that gives an awful lot of impervious surface with all of that huge long driveway. But people do like to be able to put a garage back behind. The one thing about that is that you'd be able to possibly build a house and then someday in the future do a garage back behind, kind of keep the cost of the house down a little bit on that. The one thing that was apparent right from the very start when I was talking to Public Works and the planning office is this subdivision right here over on Aspen was, while it's very creative in its design, there's a lot of really kind of like neat things there and cutting edge. You know how the shared driveways and all that and the boulevards in the street, it just really was very high maintenance. And so we didn't want to get into a situation like that where it was a lot of future, somebody's got to take care of it. The simple is better. And as we work through this process and work with Public Works, you know, there will be some changes and we'll, we just want to make a good project. So the one, if you look through your little packet there, get past the plats. It talks a little bit about the traffic study. So I took out 3 pages from the traffic study there. I highlighted at the bottom and then the top of the next page. So let me just read that here. Kind of a little bit of a conclusion. The intersections of Colorado Avenue with Denver Street and Woodside Lane have 4-way stop controls and have considerable capacity. And then in parentheses it says over 10,000 vehicle trips per day, which is well above the current traffic volume on Colorado Avenue, 1,000 vehicle trips per day. The 10 to 20 additional peak hour trips from the Cottonwood Estates development will not significantly impact the operations at any area intersection. And that's kind of their critical conclusion, I guess, that they came to when they did the traffic impact study. There's a lot of comments that we had heard from people coming out on Denver and coming over from Denver onto Wisconsin. And that can be a bad one because Wisconsin has almost 11,000 vehicles a day right now on it. It's very mobile road. Well, when you're coming out on Denver and you want to turn left, there's no control there, and so you're just going to sit there until you get a break in the traffic. So that Denver intersection is kind of a troublesome one, but that's the reason why. But Colorado itself, when Colorado was rebuilt, it was rebuilt to handle a lot more traffic. According to the traffic study, it can handle up to 10,000 vehicles a day, and right now it's only at 1,000. So Colorado has got a lot of ability to handle a lot of traffic. And then, as you know, it just shoots right up to Edgewood, and then you can just turn right there and get over onto the, to go up over the viaduct. So then, the last part that I want to talk a little bit about is actually the only part of the whole process that I still would like to discuss about is the parkland and the cash in lieu. And the reason being is that right across the street from our project is the ice dam, and the Saddle Club. It's been a lot of different things. Well, here's the do not enter. Look at that. So someday, yes, that will need to be addressed, but I don't think that our subdivision is the one who necessarily has to do that. So it is kind of an issue that, and it's been not a sore spot, I don't think, because it's there. The road is wide enough there. You saw that 2 cars passed each other, and so it went very well there. But you can see the proximity where this subdivision is. Goes right across the street. We're going to have a crosswalk. We're going to have it, very well lit there. It'll be very easy for anybody to cross to get over to the ice den. And then the thing about the ice den is that over here on the other side, you can see right over here where you've got that whole brand new playground right there. You've got the volleyball court, the big huge area of grass there. There's tables there. There's all kinds of amenities that already exist there. And so then to have another park right across the street is kind of a redundancy of services that really doesn't need to be there. We would just as soon pay the cash in lieu. When you look at the whole issue of, well, if you look through your folder here, I also included the state statute that talks about cash in lieu and parkland dedication, and how that it's the one thing that state law actually sets out that we need to discuss, we need to figure out, which would be better. Is there a reason for a park in this area? Are there lots of parks already here? Is cash in lieu to be used as something more efficient? And then I also included from November 10th, 2015, so over a year ago, I actually went to one of the park board meetings and visited with them about it and talked to them about what I wanted, you know, what we thought about doing the cash in lieu. So clear back then, we were proposing right from the very start to do cash in lieu. So it wasn't something that we changed along the way or anything like that. I changed who was coming to the meeting, so there was some stuff on our end that got miscommunicated, yes. But right from the start, we were talking about doing cash in lieu just because of the whole situation of that good park being right across the street there. And at that very particular meeting, if you look at the, excuse me, at the next page, and I had gone through a bunch of the subdivision plats that had been approved, and it appeared that there was an awful lot of cash in lieu being accepted, that was kind of being the norm. At that November 10th meeting is at the meeting when, for Maple Ridge or Timber Ridge, whichever one you want to call it, they accepted cash in lieu for that one. And so I didn't think that we were too much out of the ordinary to request doing cash in lieu, especially when there's this situation of a park being right across the street. At the planning board, it was suggested that perhaps we could just do just the land donation and then not develop it into a park, just leave it vacant. And I don't want to do that at all. I mean, that would be kind of silly to donate land to the, well, it wouldn't even be donated to the city, it would just be to the HOA and then just be sitting there vacant. That would just be, I don't know what the reason for that would be. But the one thing though that I would suggest is that there's really, if you turn to the last page in your packet there that I gave you, there's really a nice bunch of trees right in the middle of the subdivision. You can kind of see them right here. That if we do have to do a park, we would like the option to be able to do that where those trees are. There's 12 really nice pine trees there. Well, there's the playground, the brand new playground. And that's right across the street from Cottonwood. I think I got another shot here where I can see the trees just a little bit better. They're right there, right in the middle there. There's 12 really nice pine trees right there. And if you decide that, yes, we need to have a park here in this area, right across the street from the other park, that we would like the option, as we worked with Public Works, to develop our drainage system. And, you know, if we decide not to do the pump, if there's some other things that we do and look at, that possibly we'd be able to preserve those trees and have our park area there. But we would still like to do the cash in lieu. We just don't think that having another park in this area is really that good of an idea. And then you start looking at the economics of it. So then you take 2 lots out of the subdivision, which it'll be about 2 lots. And there, you know, the tax base for the city goes down. Each one of those lots, when it gets built out, you know, I looked at all the houses around there. Taxes are around $3,000 a year for each of those. And so you've got that lost tax base, especially if it's just sitting vacant out there. You know, when you look at the larger picture here, Viking Creek is down there. Across from Viking Creek is a huge conservation easement over there. You know, so there's lots of open, excuse me, lots of open space that's already available down around there. And so I guess that I would just ask for you to consider accepting cash in lieu from us for the park instead of the parkland. And the other issue, the final issue, I think, that was brought up during the public comment periods was the deer. And there is a lot of deer over there. You guys all know that there are a lot of deer around town. And so I did a little bit of research on that. And it's called urban wildlife. And they say that within 3 generations, any kind of wildlife will become completely urbanized. And that's where they know is safe. They'll just become habituated to people's yards and plants and flowers and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's happened around town. And is it good or bad? Well, you know, it's just what it is. And so, you know, it's kind of neat to be able to just see those deer all over the place. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thanks very much. Any questions for Charles?
Maybe later.
Maybe later. I'm
I
sure,
would
I'm
be
sure
glad
you'll
to
stick
come
around.
up for rebuttal or to come up later. With
Great,
any
thanks,
questions.
Charles. Appreciate the presentation. Any public comment tonight on this item? Kevin, his name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Kevin Gercio, 735 Denver. I live about 200 yards from this proposed subdivision. I've lived there for over 20 years. I've got concern, along with some of my neighbors, that the density of the project is too large and sets a precedence for the future. As you saw in Charles' videos, there are 10 5-acre parcels surrounding his subdivision right there. If you set the density for this at what he is proposing at 23 lots, that's approximately 230 more homes that will come to that intersection of Denver and Colorado. That intersection is horrible. People don't stop there. They run right through it all the time. You know, we've got issues with people cutting through from Edgewood up Texas and then down Denver to try and, you know, kind of meander their way to Wisconsin to then head towards, you know, the ski resort in that area. I drive down, I've got 3 routes out of my house to try and get my daughter to the elementary school. It's a challenge every morning. You can either go up Edgewood and cross the tracks and possibly roll the dice with the train and sit there or not sit there, or you can go down Colorado and sit at the traffic light at Edgewood and Wisconsin, which is hit or miss of when that light will change. And then you can go to Denver and Wisconsin and never get out on the road there, regardless of whether you're trying to make a right to go skiing or make a left to come into town. You know, there's been the last precedence that you guys set with the High Point subdivision up here on 2nd Street. I believe there are 24 acres there, and they have 56 homes that went in or have been approved for that subdivision. You know, Charles here is proposing on 4.6 acres, 23 home sites. And like I said, with the adjoining properties that are around there, that could potentially put in 230 more homes, all coming to that intersection of Denver and Colorado. Nobody's gonna go up Colorado to meander their way through Crestwood to get out onto Wisconsin. Everybody's gonna come to that intersection right there. You know, the Hidden Meadow Preserve, which is at the end of Texas, is just under 7 acres, and there are 20 home sites there. You know, I've just urged the council to consider the future of that whole neighborhood and the precedents that this will set if this subdivision is this large. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for your comments. Further public testimony tonight. Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca Norton, 530 Scott Avenue. There's a few things that came up tonight that we didn't hear on the planning board. But one thing that happened on the planning board was that the place where I think the park is designated has low water or high water issues. And I would just really encourage you to keep the park designation. I've never seen the park director come and actually request that before, and I think it's important for the city to have that. And then also, I still think there's high groundwater issues. I thought when we passed the critical areas ordinance a long time ago that we modeled things on a 100-year cycle, not just one season, because we never know when we're going to get a high year versus a drought year. And so I think there are historical groundwater issues that could affect adjacent properties and with water trespassing. And so I'd be careful about not keeping what you can in terms of open space and parklands. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Rhonda.
Good evening, Council. Rhonda Fitzgerald, 412 Lupfer Ave. I have just sort of general comments, not so much specifically about this development, but you know, we're spending a lot of time right now talking about housing and housing stock and having enough inventory of the kinds of things that people want to buy, people who want to live here. And it has become apparent that the downtown neighborhoods, the close-in neighborhoods that were built on a sort of a block and alley grid system, small lots, pretty dense, are very desirable. And there's not nearly enough of that inventory to meet the demand. And the fact that there are 10 5-acre parcels that were laid out on that grid system, more or less, is a pretty interesting concept going forward. I would love it if this design, which I know it's too late, had alleys so that the garages could be off the alleys and you wouldn't get that snout house look. Because this is looking like a neighborhood to me, and if there's a 5-acre behind it that the street could go through and you could have the alleys, that'd be great, I think, because I think there's demand for that kind of thing. I have no idea what Mr. Lapp's price point is or anything like that, but this is dense, and dense is kind of what we seem to need more of, it occurs to me. And there is a lot of park all around there, and you know, the cost of land is what drives the cost of the home. So I don't know, maybe we, not necessarily tonight, but in the future, want to think about, maybe we have the stick by the wrong end here, and maybe we do want more density, and maybe we do want street and alley grid system, and look at the places in our community where we can expand that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Further public testimony? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion or a motion. Who would like to begin? Richard, and then Jen.
I'd like to just briefly discuss some of the rationale that I think, and maybe Frank can talk more about it, and Maria, the reason for dedicating that parkland in that southeast corner. And that is, since there are those other parcels and looking at those developments, the thought, as I understand it, is that eventually we could and would require each one of those 5-acre parcels to dedicate parkland, so that essentially you'll have 4 corners all combined, and then you'd have a real significant park in that area. And I don't think that the original intent of the Saddle Club Park is going to meet, is not an offset for this subdivision. So there's that. There's the other thing, can I ask Charles a question?
Of course.
We had some discussion, and it didn't get anywhere other than I did it, about this recycling issue. And have you had any further thoughts about maybe including, at least setting aside a place in your CC&Rs for recycling? And I'm talking just about cardboard and plastics. I mean, it's not bare attractants or the idea of curbside recycling. Be forward thinking in this subdivision, and being the bright and shining light about recycling in subdivisions in Whitefish. I put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's all right. Actually, I'm better when I get asked questions than when I'm just trying to present stuff. I did drive around and look at some other projects, I guess you would say, and they all kind of get to looking. I didn't find anything that was only recycling. They all had garbage bins. And so then typically they're fenced with some kind of a fence, a privacy fence type thing with a gate. Some of them had locks on them and stuff like that. And there again, if it's just recycling, I just don't know. And like I said before, I will be glad to encourage it within the covenants, that people should do that. But to actually commit, while I'm standing up here in front of you, to do something like that, I don't know what it would look like. I just, you know, I don't know if it would be as big as this right here, if it would be something that would be fenced. I just don't. And so if somebody could show us, you know, what it would look like, then I would maybe be able to answer more affirmatively. But I would be afraid to know what I'm committing to.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how big of a piece to set aside.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions or comments? Or can I have a motion? Jen?
I'll move to approve the Whitefish preliminary plat 1603 and adopt the findings of fact in the staff report, the 19 conditions of approval, and deny the requested zoning deviations to the road and driveway offset as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on November 17th, 2016.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Motion has been seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion on the motion? Andy?
Yeah, I guess just to, I mean, because we obviously had letters and Kevin spoke about density there tonight and the concerns with what could be there in the future. But I think we have to remember that, I mean, the property is zoned WR2 with a maximum of 7 to 12 dwelling units per acre. So at 5 acres, we could potentially see 60 units there. So we're actually seeing a third of what they could put there should they want to do it. And quite frankly, as we went through our housing needs assessment tonight and looking at affordable workforce housing, it'd probably be better off if we had 60 units there, because as we all know, land cost is what drives housing cost here. So while I think we're sensitive to the neighborhood's concerns about that, it is a pretty good place for infill, and I think the developer is doing something that isn't maximizing it out and is being as sympathetic to those concerns as possible and to what looks good out in the neighborhood. So that's it.
Thanks, Andy. Further comments? Chuck?
Question maybe for Wendy. Regarding the condition and the requirement for the HOA park, is there any obligation for the HOA to improve that park, or can they basically just mow it and it stays that way?
Yeah, it would be up to Charles as he's developing the park. He could just leave it in its natural state. The parkland dedication, again, is based on the value of the land. So for land improvement, it could be just a percentage of the property, but if he chooses to improve it, the value or the actual land dedication could be reduced because he's making actual improvements to the land. So the improvements in the land can't exceed that value.
Okay.
So we could end up with less land, but more improvements.
Yeah, the concern I would express for the council to think about is we have an awful lot of HOA parks in Missoula when I was down there, and they basically became weed infested areas. Now we do have a code enforcement officer who can make sure that they at least cut those weeds, but we found with many HOA parks, they were never developed and they were basically neglected. We see a park over in Baker Commons, it exists there, and they expect the city to improve their little neighborhood park, and we've told them, no, you can go ahead and improve your own park, but we're not necessarily going to improve that park. So I just caution you to think of that. Now, if you're thinking that maybe 4 corners of adjacent properties could form a nice big park, that maybe is a little different scenario. But with this one, if it's not developed, I think you'll just see it pretty neglected.
Further comments or discussion? Frank?
Maria, when we had this discussion at Planning Board, and the decision or the recommendation of Planning Board was to, in fact, take the park rather than cash in lieu, if the park board is correct, and we were able to get the other 4 corners to make it all adjacent, would the city at that point, would the land at that point be effectively become a city park, and we would then be responsible for its improvements and its maintenance?
Yes, once it becomes a 1 acre park.
Okay.
That's what triggers the city to take it on.
Great, thank you.
On that note, Maria, the north and south adjoining properties are zoned WR2, the eastern parcels WLR, large residential, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Dave? WLR? Anyway, it's zoned WLR. If that parcel's developed, is there a parkland dedication requirement with WLR?
I would have to.
It'd be the same for any zoning district.
Any
The
zoning
subdivision
district?
requires parkland dedication
Okay.
or a cash in lieu. And it's
Okay.
up to the park board to determine whether they want the parkland or the cash in lieu. So.
Okay. Was there any consideration given at the planning board to Mr. Lapp's preference to have that park encumber the area where you have some mature trees?
That was not presented at the park board. The intention from the park board was to have it in the corner so that it could in the
For
future
that
develop
purpose.
into a larger park.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Maria. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, everyone, for attending the hearing this evening. We'll move on to item 7B, which is a request from the City Council regarding comments we would like to have from the public on an application from private property owners to Flathead County for a Highway 93 South Whitefish corridor plan with associated zoning amendments. We had a work session regarding this plan about 2 weeks ago. Mr. de Grand Prix came and presented the plan and answered questions, and the council elected to hold this as a public hearing to solicit public comments on this plan. With that said, I'll turn it over to Dave Taylor for an overview of the plan and his staff report.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, on October 20th, Dave de Grand Prix from Land Solutions LLC came on behalf of quite a few property owners on Highway 93 South, and they presented a plan to the planning board. Since it kind of caught the planning board off guard, they decided to hold a public hearing on that at their last meeting, where a public comment was taken on that. And then you guys obviously had a work session, as you mentioned. And we wanted to provide more opportunity for the public to be able to comment and get feedback so that we can compile our comments to the county on that. And the public hearing will be at the county planning board on January 11th. And so we need to get our comments to the county within the next week or so. So what the plan intends is changing the zoning on 490 acres of land that stretches 1.5 miles south of Highway 40. All of that's currently zoned agricultural, either SAG 5 or Ag 20. And the majority of their plan proposes a more intensive either commercial or business service zoning, business service district zoning over that. Again, as I mentioned, all of the area of the plan is currently within the jurisdiction of Flathead County. Whitefish had long had on our list of to-dos a corridor plan for that area, but it was put kind of on the back burner due to the length of the donut dispute and then the inability to jointly pursue a plan with Flathead County, which would be the ideal situation for the city to develop it. However, within our growth policy, we did have some provisions and said, you know, as far as this plan goes, regardless of who conducts the corridor plans, they should have an extensive stakeholder involvement program and should take a comprehensive approach to the critical issues such as transportation modes, land use, screening, noise, access, and aesthetics. So one of our concerns with this process was there wasn't a whole lot of stakeholder participation. It was put together by the private property owners without really any input from the city or the county in the development of the plan. We did have some initial conversations with the plan developer, and we talked a little bit about the non-conforming uses there and what types of zoning districts might be appropriate to try to address those things, but we never really talked about the area of the plan or certainly what they were intending to do with when they brought it in. So one of the things that we were hoping for is, you know, more community input, possibly asking the county planning board to delay the process a little bit so that we can get more input from the public, that they might be able to accommodate some of our concerns with the plan. And while there's quite a few things with the plan that I think are interesting with regard to the overlay zone they're proposing, the overlay zone does include standard whitefish type elements that we have in our zoning code, including landscaping requirements, buffers, requirements for a site plan, signage that mirrors our sign code, dark skies lighting controls, some architectural review elements, and other restrictive standards like that, which we think are certainly a positive with this plan. We were concerned with the proliferation of commercial growth shown in the plan. Basically, the plan extends the B2A zoning south of Highway 93 to the about 1,500 feet beyond what it currently is, and I think it's on page 381 of your packets, or actually 379 shows their proposed zoning map. Currently, we have commercial zoning within Whitefish that goes up to Highway 40. Some of that's now in the county, and so it's currently county B2A, and they're proposing to extend that quite a ways up. We're T. Bauer's property at the southeast corner of that intersection extends up there. The width of that is quite large as far as how far it goes on the west side of the highway. It's larger, wider than most of our B2 zoning that goes throughout the southeast, or the South Whitefish, Highway 93 South area from Highway 40 North. Considering that Highway 40 and 93 intersection is a critical gateway to the entrance of Whitefish, it's always been a huge concern of the community how that develops. Our 1996 2020 County Master Plan and the South Whitefish Neighborhood Plan that was done in 1998, as well as our 2007 growth policy, all recommended limiting commercial growth no further south on Highway 40. Our extension of services plan does not currently call for any extension of services past Highway 40. So most of those lots in that area, especially on the west side, have high groundwater. There's some wetlands in there and whatnot. I think it'd be very difficult to develop those as commercial properties without water and sewer. So we definitely don't recommend any extension of that B2 zoning from where it currently is. The business service district is a little more interesting. What they're proposing, however, is quite a large swath of business service district zoning that goes all the way, quite a ways past Blanchard Lake Road, south. That zoning doesn't allow commercial retail like restaurants or hotels or other retail uses. It's a zoning district that we currently have a very similar one to what the county has out at Highway 40 and Dillon Road. It's basically for building supplies and maybe some professional offices, light manufacturing. And there's a site plan component of that because it's a highway thing that requires frontage roads and clustering and controls, access controls and whatnot. So if there was to be some kind of a zoning put in place that sort of legitimized a lot of those non-conforming properties that are out there, that business service district might be one that would be something that we would certainly consider as an option. Whether or not it's appropriate here or not, I'm not sure, but certainly there was some discussion when we adopted that business service zoning that it might be appropriate on some of those properties that have existing non-conforming uses. However, what this plan shows is the width of that business service district extending far beyond those properties that front the highway that have those commercial uses. So there's going to be quite a bit of impact to the residential properties that are on the backside of those lots that front the highway. And for that reason, if there was any application of that business service district, we would certainly recommend that it be limited to the properties that do front on the highway and not go any further south than the Blanchard Lake Road intersection. I mentioned that overlay zone. Again, there's some really good landscaping standards in there, similar to what we have, 10% landscaping requirement up to an acre. A lot of those properties that have developed out there, are non-conforming. The parking lots don't have landscaping in them. And so this overlay zone would require a landscaping plan submitted to the county if anyone does develop that. Their signage requirements, I think, are certainly better than what is in place currently in the county along that area. It would limit freestanding signs to 50 square feet per face and building mounted signs to 24 square feet, and also would restrict internally illuminated signs and neon lighting, which I think are very consistent with our current sign codes. The architectural design standards within the overlay would require the county zoning administrator to review building elevations, and it states that buildings need to be designed with a mountain town, historic American West, national park, or other similar architectural themes. And it limits building footprints to 15,000 square feet. It's definitely not as detailed as our architectural standards, but it's certainly better than what exists currently out there in the county. Again, I mentioned the lighting requirements that require dark sky lighting. I think that's a very attractive component of it. Canopies and awnings cannot be illuminated. No neon lighting around a building. Signs made of wood or natural materials encouraged. And then the parking requirements, they have a requirement that's but 40% of the parking needs to be behind the building, which I think is certainly more attractive. They do have, there's a little glitch in their thing where they talk about landscaping standards for parking lots, but there's no additional standards within there. I think that they might want to look at that and mirror our requirement for parking lots to have at least an 8% landscaping requirement. Another important aspect of this is the transportation improvements. That's something that our growth policy called for in any kind of corridor plan in this area, which is backage and frontage roads. Frontage roads are good for access, but they do encourage strip development, so backage roads are preferred, and they do have a requirement that that would be looked at. And then if multiple projects come in at the same time, that they need to work together for their access control. And they certainly want to consolidate accesses and limit where people turn in and out of the highway, and possibly encourage things like islands with left turn lanes and stuff on the highway. Obviously, MDOT would have a lot to say about that. But and they also recommend reducing the vehicle speed to 45 miles an hour along that stretch, and then have some land dedicated along their easements for bike and pedestrian future route, which I think is consistent with our bike ped planning. So as far as how this relates to our growth policy, I mean, it's definitely a much more intensive proposed use than what's there currently. Those non-conforming uses along there have always been a bit of a consternation. I think through the growth policy process, a lot of those property owners came to the city and you know, bemoan the fact that they can't really expand their uses, they can't do much with their properties. If they're vacant for more than 6 months, that, you know, that right of a non-conforming office or whatever goes away and has to be used as a residential unit or some other thing. And so I think that the city at that time was, you know, pretty open-minded to looking at that area in more detail, but just because of the need for a corridor plan to really address the specifics of those things. And unfortunately, the city wasn't able to pursue that in the county either. So we have these private property owners that are requesting this to the county, and so all we can do at this point is provide our input, and hopefully the developers in the county will take a good hard look at our comments and try to accommodate them into their whatever they decide to approve. Just one last thing about the growth policy. There is quite a bit of language in there that specifically speaks to this particular corridor. And again, I mentioned that it, you know, talks about discouraging this area from becoming a commercial strip south of Highway 40. And I mentioned that the corridor plan, or the previous South Whitefish plan that was put in place, certainly discouraged that. When the original zoning was put in place in 1993, that was part of the Blanchard Lake zoning district, and that SAG 5 was specifically added along the highway to discourage commercial development, because that was not supported by the master plan that was in effect at the time, or subsequent master plans that have been adopted since then. But the growth policy says any corridor plan for that area must successfully address the following issues: commercial growth, and it does say commercial growth will continue to be discouraged by the city of Whitefish, and I think a lot of that's really going to come down to what the city's view is on any extension of municipal water and sewer to that area, because certainly getting sewer permits for some of those smaller properties, I think, would be fairly problematic. We've seen septic permits denied. I think where that CrossFit facility is, a development wanted to go in there, and that they weren't able to do much of a development in that area because of the septic issues. Another thing, that the scale is something that the growth policy called for us to look at. Existing modest scale of the commercial and residential structure should be maintained. No big box retail or large office buildings being proposed. Architectural standards, certainly if it was in the city limits, we'd have the opportunity for architectural review. Not being within the city limits limits that, although this particular plan does call for an overlay that has some architectural review. Landscaping and screening, you know, there's some concern in the growth policy about the forest stands that existed there, and how those things might be impacted by development. Utilities, obviously, we mentioned that. Traffic safety and bike pedestrian facilities. So that's pretty much the plan in a nutshell, and we certainly look forward to your guys' comments and preparing a draft letter to the county, and I'll certainly modify that per the comments we received tonight and your direction from the council. So,
thanks, Dave. Any questions for Dave? on his staff report. I had a quick question, Dave. So in your staff report, you indicated that the business service district would help kind of address a lot of the non-conforming uses that occur in that area. I'm familiar with those uses. My question is, what additional uses would you envision in a business service district? And then secondly, similarly with the B2A, extending that south of 40, what are the permitted uses in the B2A?
Well, the B2A is very similar to our secondary business district, the existing B2. So pretty much anything that's allowed in that B2. It does restrict small retail, but certainly a gas station, a hotel, a grocery store, all those things are allowed in the county B2A.
Okay.
Whether they could, get septic permit is a whole nother matter, but.
So it's it's closely consistent with our B2.
The county, when they did their Whitefish, when they got control of the donut and they did their Whitefish zoning district plan, they created new zones that were very similar to a couple of our zones. Two of those zones that they borrowed from us was our business service zoning district, very, very similar to ours. Has restrictions, conditional use permits for buildings over 15,000 square feet, things like that. But the uses that are there are very similar to our existing B2, WB2. And then the business service district was modeled after our business service district zoning that we have out there at Highway 40 in Dillon, or had when it was in our jurisdiction. So in that, again, some of the uses, additional uses allowed in that, I can read through that. It's in the plan, but permitted uses include agricultural uses, ancillary retail or showrooms, that has to be ancillary to one of the other uses. Animal hospital, contractor storage yards, dance, drama, or music school, single-family dwelling, farm equipment sales, feed, seed, and farm supply, light assembly and manufacturing fabrication, including light food manufacturing and processing, repairing, packing, livestock, nursery, parcel delivery service, personal services, print and copy shop, produce stand, professional offices, repair of equipment and consumer items such as appliances, watches, lawn and garden equipment, riding academy, small equipment sales, rental and repair, conducted indoors with no outside storage, wholesale trade and warehousing. And then there's some conditional uses such as churches, college or trade school, convention hall, daycare.
Those are conditional?
Yeah, kennel, mini storage, research lab. And one of the more important aspects of that zoning is it does have additional design standards that are required. Right. And I think that's an important consideration, where it's one commercial use per permitted acre. Multiple commercial uses need to be clustered together. Anyway, all that stuff's in the plan, and we can go into more detail if you want, but landscaping requirements, signage requirements. So it's different than a standard commercial zone, and then there's a lot more site plan review. They have to develop a site plan when they submit it so that you can look at access and control, see how that affects other properties, trying to consolidate those things.
What are the primary differences between the B2A allowed or conditional uses versus the BSD?
Oh, quite a bit different. Within that, like I said, the more commercial types of retail establishments would not be allowed in that business service district. But within the B2A, you could have, like I said, a hotel, you could have a gas station, you could have a restaurant, automobile repair, boat and RV sales, bowling alley, supermarket, furniture store, hotel, lumber yard, military surplus. So yeah, there's a lot more things that can happen in that B2A zone.
Okay. Further questions for Dave from the council? We did advertise for a public hearing. Excuse me, Richard.
Yeah. Dave, in your opinion, just because it's starting to occur to me, at least a visual, how would this compare to, in terms of what the public might view, compared to the manufacturing that occurs on Highway 93 down by the golf course? Sanju's old body shop. They make firearms there now. In terms of setbacks,
just outside of
landscaping along that.
So you're talking about, well, I don't know, it's Kalispell has that new Greenbelt district, or the county adopted that too, where they have a buffer along the highway. You know, this business service district it has a landscaping requirement. It's not necessarily a setback or a berm requirement like that district in the county down there. I'm not sure where, I mean, that's all in the city now, so I'm not sure what Kalispell's zoning is with regard to that.
So I'm just trying to get an idea for the visual.
Yeah, I mean, I think currently what's out there, what you see out there is the kinds of development you probably would see occur, you know. I mean, there's a couple things out there that wouldn't be allowed, like the towing businesses and things like that. But, you know, the professional offices out there, like Sarah Nargi's office, that's the kind of thing that probably would proliferate. You know, the nurseries and other things that are there are obviously okay. That are there, but.
Further questions? We did advertise for a public hearing, and we will hold that public hearing now. I do have a short sign-up list, but that certainly doesn't preclude you from commenting. But I'll start with the list, and we'll start with John Franson, followed by Andrew Ekstrom, Joan, and Mike Bode. But please feel free to comment if you did not sign up as well. Just in the spirit of our meeting tonight, we still have a lengthy agenda. If we could try and limit our comments to just a couple minutes, we would certainly appreciate that as well.
I get to be first. Okay. Well, as a Whitefish resident and a taxpayer, and also as a county resident.
Pause for just a moment. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is John Franzen, 12 Dakota Avenue. So as a Whitefish resident and taxpayer, and also as a county resident and a taxpayer, but I'm also a Montana resident and taxpayer. I'm against changing the zoning on Highway 93 at the entrance of Whitefish to expand more commercial development. I do believe that sprawling development along highway strips is aesthetically a bad idea, and that will impact our economic prosperity as a community. But there's the real reason. But the real reason is that this is just a terrible deal for me as a city taxpayer, and also it's a terrible deal for me as a Montana taxpayer. There's a reason why state law requires that a county pay deference to the cities when it comes to planning and zoning at the edge of towns. It's because urban developments at edges of a city cost city taxpayers. A perfect example is later tonight. We're going to be talking about increased ambulance fees. 70% of our ambulance responses are for areas that are not within Whitefish to Whitefish residents. So as we require the infiltration or the proliferation of services that are inevitable to come with annexed growth around the edges, it will impact Whitefish taxpayers. Whitefish taxpayers will be paying for the proliferation of those services around the edges. The police have to go to these places even though they're not in the town. The fire services and subsidies like that have to take place. And that's why the state law provides deference to you as a city to manage the growth around the edges so that the taxpayers of the city are not unnecessarily burdened with the growth around the edges, and specifically urban growth. Counties were never supposed to be urban environments. That's what cities are for, with city infrastructure. So creating more urban commercial development outside of Whitefish means that Whitefish taxpayers get to pay for the increasing costs of providing the inevitable spillover in services, while commercial properties don't have to pay anything in city taxes. So so these businesses can sort of grow, and kind of leverage the investments that city taxpayers make in creating a prosperous, one of the more prosperous communities in Whitefish without necessarily having to participate in paying for that. It's also a bad deal for Montana state taxpayers because this plan calls for the inevitable highway improvements, turn-off lanes, stoplights, rework signage, because they're planning on packing commercial development along a highway that people are used to driving 65 miles an hour on. And so who's going to pay for those future road and infrastructure requirements with new turnoffs and things like that? It's going to be Montana taxpayers. It's highway taxpayers when you pay your gas. So this is why commercial sprawl has been proven to be a loser for taxpayers time and time again. It's terrible economics. It's not conservative politics. So why is this zoning change being requested? It's not because there's a need for more growth and expansion down Highway 93. The studies have shown that there's been several decades worth of available retail, light industrial, and commercial expansion available within city limits. The best I think we can tell is that the reason why this zoning request has been made is because some property owners feel like they can potentially sell their properties for more money than they could under current zoning. In order to do this, they would like to push the associated costs off on the taxpayers of the city and to Montana taxpayers. It is possible that I could probably sell my house for more money if I could change the zoning. I bet I could get more money for it if I could make a restaurant out of it or a hotel. I bet that would increase the value of my property, but that's not how things work. I knew what the zoning was when I bought my house. My neighbors also knew that what the zoning was too, and they likely trust the continuance of that zoning because that's a property right that they can bank on. If the property owners on Highway 93 want to operate and expand commercial operations, they should do what everybody else does. Buy property that is properly zoned for it. Finally, commercial sprawl on Highway 93 is a safety hazard. The idea of lining a highway of speeding cars with businesses that requires cars to pull in and out is just bad for safety. So they're talking about lowering the speed limits in response to that. But I refer back to that. Why? Why are we going to, lower the speed limits just so for the next foreseeable future, people will drive at that speed because some people were not happy with the value that they could get for selling their property? That's not a good reason to pass those costs on to taxpayers. So there's already significant commercial property already zoned within Whitefish, and there's no need to expand this already undeveloped area or underdeveloped area another 1.5 miles, just so a few property owners can upwardly rig the resale value of their property. So for those reasons, I think that the city should vigorously protest this plan. It's likely not, the process is likely not in compliance with the law, and the limited public process that this plan that is now coming up to us the public process was virtually non-existent, and it simply does not smell the way that a public process should smell. And those are my comments, so thank you.
Thanks, John. Who's next?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Ekstrom. I live at 105 Emerald Drive. I'm here representing a group of homeowners in the Emerald Heights neighborhood. If you could raise your hand if you're in Emerald Heights, please. We're here to just express concern at the proposed zoning changes. So we actually do live behind the large section of red at the corner of 93 and 40, the southeast corner, exactly right there, yep. And so you'll recognize that corner as the one that always has the fireworks stand in the summertime, which is fun for all the kids. But I can tell you, even though we live by the highway, the extra noise from the fireworks stand for those few weeks that it's there is pretty significant to the homes that are nearby. The highway is white noise, but the fireworks stand makes, excuse me, makes a lot of noise during the evening, has generators running, there's people coming and going, there's honking. And we actually are kept up from it most nights during the 4th of July season. They're blowing off fireworks until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And so I can only imagine what it would be like to have development that would have business hours to that time, a hotel, a restaurant, a gas station. The noise would be a substantial impact to our homes and our ability to sleep at night, and the light would filter into our homes. One of the other things that we worry about is the safety of the people in the neighborhood. Very few people know that we even exist back there. We're covered in trees. There's 2 little streets that come in and out. It's very quiet. There's very few people who drive through. Our children, we have lots of little kids in the neighborhood, and we let them roam free, you know, going to neighbors and running up and down the streets and scooters. It would be very concerning to have cars that would be parking by nearby, potentially having transients or people at the gas stations or whatever might be there. Make me feel less comfortable how my children running around that neighborhood. So I'll keep my comments short. The gentleman was very eloquent before me. I won't go into detail. I agree with most of what he said. But please be very considerate of the neighborhoods behind the areas as you're making your proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the comments. Joan?
Greetings, Council. Joan Vetter-Ehrenberg, 744 Hidden Valley Drive. As the crow flies, I'm from East Blanchard Lake Road, a mile from Whitefish Stage. So I feel like I'm a neighbor, and this very much affects the area where I live because there's one property owner between myself and this 490 acres, which A, I think is way too large to ask for a zone change. B, Whitefish has historically said no commercial south of Highway 93. This is way too big, way too fast, without public notice. It needs to be slowed down. The planning department, please, please, please give them strong direction to take to the county if we just say no, but we know how that goes. So I oppose the zoning changes for additional commercial land, commercial zones south of Highway 93. It's just not necessary. We have so much growth going on in our town. We have to absorb what we're experiencing, and we still have land yet to be developed to go to this commercial district. It will, of course, create sprawl. Please stand firm in support of state laws that require the county to work with the city to adopt zoning regulations that are compatible with the planning and zoning regulations that the city has adopted. And then also, the added traffic and infrastructure is going to impact all of us. And as John said, costs for new development outside the city at this time and in this area are not supported by city facility plans and are not cost-effective use of city, county, or state tax dollars when the city has much more cost-effective options for infill development. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all being here.
Thank you, Joan. Who's next?
Hello, my name is Mike Bode. I live at 915 Columbia Avenue. I'm representing my property at 5932 Highway 93 South, which is the CrossFit gym. I am hoping that you guys can work with the proposal of Land Solutions and work with the county on getting something approved. We need a zoning change. I've owned that property for 6 years, been going through this whole process, just hoping that one day I can actually get off the road and do my work here in town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Turner.
My name's Turner Askew. I live at 3 Ridgecrest Court in Whitefish. I'm a little bemused. I came here thinking I was going to talk in very positive things, and I'm listening to people and wondering if I read the wrong document. This document that I downloaded from when I was on the council, this is the kind of thing we were hoping to get. But to talk about the fire department, we have a rural fire department. I know you know that. And that's why the fire department goes out into the county, because the county supports the rural fire department, and the ambulance is the same. You've got an opportunity here, in my opinion, and I've been wrong a lot of times, maybe I'm wrong again, but you've got an opportunity to work with the county to do something that I think maybe we'd like to keep it at parkland, but it's not going to happen that way. So you have an opportunity to do something and maybe direct something nice. It's not in the city. You know, and I just hope that the people in the audience realize you are limited to what you can do unless there's a document like this that you can say this is what you promised. So I would encourage you to look very favorably at this. This may be the best you can get. Thank you.
Thanks, Turner. Who's next? Rebecca.
Rebecca Norton, 530 Scott Avenue. Well, there is one other option. We could actually ask the county for another corridor study, like we tried to do 3 times and got shot down each time. And so I think if people are serious about like actually designing this area, I don't think it would have to be a long corridor study, but I think the people that would be most impacted by it would then have an opportunity to show up and actually hear how it would impact their own lives. So I think you should put that on the table once again. I mean, the whole reason for turning down the corridor studies to begin with was to take away the donut. The donut's already taken away, and so maybe the county will be willing to actually cooperatively work on planning at our borders. And I think it would be more than fair to the people that own property there to get this done. I personally think it is transitioning to commercial. I don't think it's really fair to the people that own property along there not to work with them on some kind of plan. But I also don't think it's appropriate to proceed without the city having more of a say about how it's going to develop, since it is the gateway to our community. So I would like the county commissioner that is present to discuss the possibility of actually having a corridor plan renegotiated. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Who's next? Anyone, just come on up.
Hi, Sarah Nargi. I own property at 5850 Highway 93 South on the corridor. I have a medical practice there. I have a lot to say, but I'll try and be brief. I think for a long time, many of the landowners there have gotten together and talked to each other, and whether they use the land for residential use or business use, almost everybody has a problem with the zoning. It creates either the inability to use their business to their full potential, be able to grow their business over time, be able to sell their land. It's right on the highway. It's a really busy highway. And it's a challenge. We've gotten together, talked to the city, talked to the county, and we've really put a lot of effort into this. And we're not trying to be jerks here. Like, I think everybody's on the same page. We want Whitefish to be beautiful. We want the gateway into Whitefish to be attractive, tasteful, not tacky, not take away from the downtown retail district, but also be fair to the landowners as well, and realistic, because growth occurs. We've hired Dave DeGrandpré with Land Solutions, who primarily does municipal planning and zoning. He was the Lake County land, Dave Taylor's going to know, planning commissioner, planning director. And he put a lot of effort into into pulling Whitefish into this decision. I don't think that the landowners even need to be here. We're here because we want to cooperate. We want Whitefish to be happy with this decision. Like, we want to change, but we want everybody to agree as well as possible. Nobody's trying to get away with anything. We're doing our best to keep everyone happy. We want input, but we also want something that's a bit more fair than something that exists currently.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate your comments. Stephen.
Stephen Gordon, 219 Dakota Avenue, and own the property 5938 US Highway 93 South. And I've been a property owner in that district for over 15 years now. One of the things I've observed, and I'm a good observer, which is why I'm good at what I do, is that because of the busyness of the highway, the noise of the highway, there is no input from hardly any of the property owners to maintain anything of quality or to invest in their properties, because there's no return on investment in that area. When we first got started with this process as a neighborhood, almost 10 years ago, we had one of our neighbors, this was in the middle of the big housing boom before the bubble popped, there's neighbors that, where the wife had a cancer that they had to travel to Great Falls to get treatment. There was no other treatment available anywhere. And they were desperately trying to sell their house to not have the stress of commuting back and forth to Great Falls. They could not get a single bite on their house in that district. And things didn't turn out well in that situation. So we were also at that time getting started to try to help them, but between the county and city, we've been left hanging for over 10 years trying to just get some good discussions going on proper representation with our zoning out there. The great majority of the properties along the highway there are businesses, low volume, and businesses that operate in ways that if they were in the city, the overheads would not allow the business to survive. And so having an intelligent rural district helps the smaller businesses that need to control overheads in different ways that aren't relying on the population base strictly to have a business and to employ a lot of employees. I pay my employees very well and take care of people very well. And I'm glad to hear at least one person in the audience at least read our proposition, but I doubt that the boogeyman resistance against urban sprawl does not take into account reality of what we're really trying to do here and honor Whitefish and take care of business very well and upgrade that district. But what I started with earlier is what I've noticed in the decline in the area, and one example I'll give, there was an early 1900s house, farmhouse on the road down closer to Coffee Traders that burned down in the last 7 years, I believe. But because the property and options are so limited, what ended up there is a single wide. But that's the district that we're living in. We're trying to upgrade our quality and improve the gateway. So that's the main thing I wanted to share at this point, and want to cooperate with everyone in the process. And we're not trying to threaten or change anything. We're just trying to get acknowledgement for what we already are out there. And that's about all I have to say. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate your comments. Further public testimony? Dean. Our esteemed planning board representative from the county.
Dean Sarchak, address is 195 Remini Road, Summers. One thing I would make a pitch to the city here, being on the planning board, one piece of information I think would be very helpful to us is to have a map from your planning group showing them the properties that do not meet zoning criteria now, and that you feel would not meet it if that area was annexed in the future. So where is the non-conforming areas, and how are they non-conforming? I think that would be very helpful in our discussions.
Okay.
And I'm hearing what you guys are saying, that you want a little bit more public input. So.
Great. Thanks, Dean. We'll pass that along at the end of the meeting for consideration. Leo.
I'm Leo Keene, 514 Pine Place in Whitefish. And I really respect the neighborhood planning process that is apparently going on here with 1993 landowners, 1993 South landowners. That seems like the way it's supposed to happen, and the best way for planning to occur is with these neighborhood meetings and processes. And I would really encourage the council to work with the landowners and with this plan, and with the county when it comes before the county, to cooperate as with our interests in mind. I too am concerned about everything that the other speakers have mentioned. We're really concerned about sprawl. All we need to do is look at Kalispell. The gateways to Kalispell are nothing but an eyesore as far as I'm concerned. Highway 2 north, Highway 93 south of Kalispell, Highway 2 west of Kalispell, they're all disgraceful, is what I'd have to say. It's certainly not what we want the entrance, the gateway to Whitefish to ever become. So I'm very concerned about that happening. This is the only thing we can do right now, is to cooperate and state our strongest opinions about avoiding the potential of sprawl. I've spoken before the council before too about these particular gateway to Whitefish, which is the Highway 93 and 40 intersection, the northeast corner, a beautiful pine forest there right now, zoned 2BA, I guess it is, or B2A, whatever that is. Anyway, if you'll notice that the truck stop is a permitted process, or conditional use permit permitted there. That's what I'm afraid of occurring on that corner. That would really, to me, really detract from Whitefish, from our ambiance, the feeling of a beautiful town. We need to do something to have some kind of control over what happens on that particular piece of property. I wish we had windfall profits and could buy it, but short of that happening, put your best effort into working with the landowners and with the county and with the neighborhoods, and come up with something that's really good for Whitefish in the long run. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. Further public comment tonight?
Bill McCahey. I live out at Emerald Heights, Sapphire Court. We have 22 families in our present location. Most of those families have children. We had a gentleman here earlier tonight who was talking about intrusion on where he's living right now with a 22 home subdivision. Well, can you imagine what that's going to be like for Emerald Heights when it's commercial? So we have some issues. The other thing that's coming up, I think, will be that the city will be asked to provide sewer and water. We are in the process of trying to get another well out there. We have talked to the city about sewer, or at least water. So I'm wondering if all of those people out there in the new subdivision are going to be digging wells, or are they going to ask you to extend your services? I'm guessing they're going to ask you to do that. And I think that would be good for the city, but it's going to be real expensive for a lot of people. So I would really hope that we could keep the zoning as it is right now because of the residents out there. And, you know, I don't know what it's zoned for the businesses like they are, Hill Brothers, and the coffee traders, and all those people. We're getting along fine right now, and I just think the traffic and everything would kill our little subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
My name's Whitefish. I live at 5710 Highway 93 South. I am on your map. I could go into a lot of things because I've lived on that property since 1980. I've lived in Whitefish since 1970. I have invited, when the donut and everything was going on, every council member here to come to my property so I could show them the businesses that are out there, what they do, what the property's like, and what kind of zoning we needed. That included Mr. Mitchell, and I've invited him as a county commissioner. None of you have even bothered to go out there and look. From Blanchard Lake Road south to where it turns into the green, I'll bet you there's nobody on this board that has a clue what businesses are on that property. I can tell you what businesses are on every one of them, and every one of them has businesses. But nobody on this board, or people making comments, have ever came out to find out what is actually out there and what is actually going on. So I don't know how you guys can make a decision based on something that you don't have the information to make that decision. So anytime you'd like to come out and actually find out what's going on, you're welcome to give me a call, and I'd be happy to go over it with you. You counselors, when the donut was going on, have been invited to my property multiple times. I had one city councilor call me. You know what that city councilor said? I'm not going to waste my time talking to you. Your property isn't worth a dime because you're on a 4-lane highway. That's what the response I got from the city council of White, one council. So you're all welcome to come out anytime you choose. And that includes you, Phil.
Okay. You want to give your number out?
I'll give my phone number and my wife's. My number is 270-0283. My wife's is 250-8712. I urge you to work with this. I heard a comment tonight from a person that really got my dander up. He said, I knew what my property was when I bought it, and that's what I'm going to live with, and I don't need to change it. I knew what my property was when I bought it too. Unzoned highway property. There was no zoning in place until Blanchard Lake zoning went into effect. So my property was unzoned, worth a lot of money. It was purchased for my retirement. With the donut and the fight between the city and the county, I've been in limbo until I've actually retired now. And I can't sell my property. Nobody wants it for residential because the road noise is so high. And nobody wants it for commercial because guess what? I'm zoned SAG 5 and they can't do anything about it. I urge you to call me.
Thanks, Wade. How many more folks wish to provide comment? Just a show of hands. So we're going to need a quick break here in a minute. What's the council's preference? Break now or after these next 3 commenters?
Let's go to 3 more.
Okay, let's go.
Good evening, Mary Flowers, Citizens for a Better Flathead, 35 4th Street West in Kalispell. Thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight. We do believe that thoughtfully planned growth can and should occur without diminishing the very special characteristics of the Flathead Valley, and in this case, specifically Whitefish, that play such an important role in attracting and retaining investment that grow the Flathead economy. You should have received an email from us earlier today. I'm going to summarize some of that and then add some additional comments. And let me begin by saying, based on some of the earlier comments, I think one of the dilemmas that we're all faced in is that there have been neighbors sitting down together talking to neighbors, but not community talking to community. And I think you're also working with a set of tools, zoning tools, that are very dated, and you're trying to fit a set of zoning tools into a situation with non-conforming uses that opens the barn door wider than I think anyone wants to see it opened. And so this is going to take, to do this right and to really address growth in this area and the corridor needs, people are going to have to be willing to step back and really think outside of the box. So that's not part of my written comments, but I wanted to start with that. To begin with, the zone proposed is 490 acres. This is huge. And I think you really have to put that in the context that the downtown master plan area is only 38 acres. Under the new Whitefish downtown master plan, within that 38 acres, there's the capacity to add 200,000 square feet of new retail and commercial and 90,000 of lodging, or at least a decade of growth. Add to this commercial, office, light industrial lodging capacity recently expanded in the Highway West corridor, the existing capacity along Highway 93 South within the city, and the potential along the Wisconsin corridor as that plan is right now underway and gets finalized. And you probably have 2 decades worth of retail, commercial, office, and lodging growth within the city limits. That's the capacity that you've been planning for, that you've been scheduling your infrastructure for. There's no need for highway sprawl. Infrastructure, for the most part, is in place for the planned development you've done to supply this infill growth and to use taxpayer money wisely. The private landowners' plan for Highway 93 South seeks to change what is primarily SAG 5 and Ag 20 zone to a more intensive county commercial B2A zoning and the business service district, which also allows for a multiple of commercial business uses that would be more appropriate as infill within the city limits. The city of Whitefish is already on record with Flathead County in your letter of December 10th, 2015, as opposing the county's B2A zoning for a number of reasons. First off, they really left the barn door open for retail commercial in this district. And as you asked, and as you said in your comments, in the permitted uses of the proposed B2A zone, the Whitefish B2 lists antique stores and auction barns, but the B2A lists antique gift and card retail sales. And you ask, gift and card sales is fairly open-ended. What is a gift exactly? It could be anything. That goes contrary to the Whitefish zoning that prohibits the sale of small retail items outside of the downtown. On the list of permitted uses that is different in the county B2A zone are standalone convenience stores. And again, you submitted comments and are on the record with the county opposing these kind of uses that are not consistent with the corridor entrance. Another important point to look at is the difference between what is being proposed here as an application of this business service and B2A zone. The service district, business service district, both as the county defines it and as you define it in your zoning regulations, calls for it to be applied as an island and not a strip. And yet what you have in this proposal before you, when combined with the B2A, is over almost at least a mile plus of commercial strip development because it is so long, it's not an island, and it's not consistent with the zoning. So again, you have the wrong tools trying to fix a problem that will not fix, that you can't use the wrong tools to fix what's currently in place there, and you really need to look at what are the proper tools. Within the staff report that your planning office prepared for you and the planning board, on page 4, there is a suggestion that maybe by scaling down or narrowing this zone, that you could somehow have a compromise. The staff report, however, significantly fails to provide a comprehensive look at the capacity for existing commercial, office, light industrial, and lodging within the city limits currently. We urge you to provide the county the documentation to show that you already have in place land use, infrastructure, and transportation plans to handle the future growth needs for this type of proposed development within the city, and even a compromise on this proposed zoning is not consistent with your planning documents and will likely harm the robust economic development you have achieved with these plans, as well as the investments of many within the city. Owning property along highway corridors and Flathead is not justification for property owners outside the city limits to band together and demand non-agricultural zoning for their property so they can turn the property into what they see as a more lucrative personal benefit. That's not to say that there can't be solutions. There are people who have non-conforming uses. The history of those are complicated, and the future of those are complicated. But this plan is not the solution for that. I want to remind you that when a similar group of neighbors got together outside of Kalispell and asked for a change in zoning for more commercial uses for their property, the district court ruled unanimously on all counts and found that zoning regulations must, as nearly as possible, be made compatible with the zoning ordinances of nearby municipalities. I would note that the district court ruling on this case that Citizens for Better Flathead brought against the county was appealed by the county to the Montana Supreme Court. The court has not made a ruling on this case. We expect a ruling forthcoming in the near future, and this ruling, should this ruling be upheld, as we think it will, this will further support the argument that the city and county really need to work together carefully to craft a thoughtful plan, not for the highest and best use, but for the use that is good for the city and consistent with future growth. The other thing that's been mentioned is that there are a number of properties out there that are currently on septic systems. When you allow more development on septic there, you really are hemming in future efficient growth of the city. You know from your affordable housing study that you need to be able to put in density to address future growth of the city as you expand out. But when you lock yourself in and hem yourself in with zoning that allows for the proliferation of septic systems, it's very hard to ever get past that barrier and to grow orderly as a city. That's exactly why the state law 76-203 was put in place. So in conclusion, we would ask that you oppose the zone changes for additional commercial, office, light industrial, and lodging along Highway 93 South as unneeded and detrimental to the demonstrated economic vitality and capacity of the current city plans. Stand firm in support of state law that requires the county to work with the city to adopt zoning regulations that are compatible. What is being proposed is not compatible. You've done your work within the city, you've planned for future growth, and now you need to look at the timing for any additional growth and to make sure that you protect the investments that you've made for city residents in your local economy already. Make the case that added traffic and infrastructure impacts and the cost for new development outside of the city at this time and in this area are not supported by the city facility plans and are not necessarily cost effective. And finally, really, please reserve the opportunity and the comments that you're going to send initially to the county. County rightfully asked for initial comments from the city, but what happened in the last situation on the rezoning of the property in the donut is they took your first comments, adopted those as finding of facts, and never amended those finding of facts. So I would encourage you to ask that you reserve the opportunity once 15 days before the hearing, they have to provide the public the finding of facts and the staff report that their planning office has done of this application. That's when you need to come back and really look at the basis for the findings and the basis for what's being proposed and make additional comments. So again, I think, I hope those that are bringing this forward are willing to step back and really invite a true community planning process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Who's next? How you doing, Bill?
Hi, John. My name is Bill Montgomery, 5729 Highway 93 South. Ooh, I have no political statement to make, but I'm a property owner out there. And it's complex, and I learned a lot tonight, and certainly it's obvious we need to respect the residential neighbors there, and wow, there's a lot of factors to consider. But I have a property just north of the Hillside Church, and about 6,000 square foot building. Our intended use was education and arts, music, and tried to improve the property. I like all the things about the city zoning and with regard to landscaping and signage and lighting. It all makes sense. Hey, we love Whitefish, and even those outside the city limits feel like we're from Whitefish. So I've been here since '65, and you know, it's complex having the property there because most of it is developed into business use. It's kind of a hodgepodge, but a good deal of the property's attractive. The building I have is attractive. It's not just an old, ugly industrial metal building, which probably doesn't belong on the corridor, you know. It was a trailer house next to it. I got rid of it and paved the parking lot so we could have rehearsals for Alpine Theater and groups like that. We like to use it for educational programs, including dance for projects at our Whitefish theaters, but the county says we can't do that now. So we're SAG 5, and I either have to turn it into a fruit stand or we have to have some changes. So it was kind of nice getting together with local property owners there. It's kind of self-limiting in some ways because of septic systems. There's not going to be crazy development out there. But certainly the voices heard tonight were important, and I certainly respect all the opinions. But we do need some changes. Those of us out there, we like to be a contributor to people coming to Whitefish. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate the comments. Marilyn.
Good evening, Council. Marilyn Nelson. I live at 565 Blanchard Lake Road. And I'm speaking tonight to offer a little history from a long time ago. Thank you, Dave, for reminding me that it was in 1993 that a group of homeowners, property owners out in the Blanchard Lake Road area banded together in response to a threat from a large property owner who wanted to cut the whole Whitefish Hills area into 1-acre lots and sell it for houses. And the result of that endeavor at that time that I was involved in was the creation of the Blanchard Lake Zoning District. And I believe that that is the zoning district that is currently in existence right now. Our property actually forms one edge of that, which butts up against the Whitefish Rural Zoning District. And then it extends on the other side of Blanchard Lake Road through the whole conservation area that Greg Alexander owns, and back down there, across the highway, all the way to Highway 40, back through Emerald Heights, and south for a ways. And there's been a lot of talk about that zoning as SAG 5 and Ag 20. That is the Blanchard Lake zoning district, which was a citizen-initiated zoning district, much like this one is. So I think my comment about it is I totally understand. Along the highway, there is business out there. There probably maybe should be some business out there. I question the depth of it, again, because of the density, because of the, you know, the septic, all of those factors. My shock in seeing this as a completed document without, as a landowner involved in that original Blanchard Lake zoning district, ever knowing that this was even going on, because I don't live on that place. I wasn't one of those property owners in there involved, and yet very, very involved in the donut conversations all during that, and in the original attempt to zone that area. Felt blindsided by this. I think the community of Whitefish needs to talk together. I've lived out there. I own a business in town. You know, we all feel like we're part of Whitefish, and not being involved in this process is difficult because we are impacted by it, whether it's our businesses in Whitefish or whether it is our rural neighborhoods there. This is a dramatic change from the original intent of that neighborhood, which was, you know, rural residential. And backing up against Emerald Heights, which is a residential area, I just think I agree with Rebecca, or with Mary, that we need to step back and take a look at this again, see how it can work with what Whitefish has outlined in its growth policy, how it can work with the residential neighbors out there, and how accommodations can be made for those property owners there who are currently having difficulties and operating non-conforming businesses. So let's work together as a community on this and see if we can find some solutions that work for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Further, Chris.
Chris Schustrom, 504 Spokane Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, I'd encourage the council, when you're thinking about this, to not get caught up in the weeds of what about a conditional use? Would that be a conditional use? Explain the business services district. I think you need to take a broader view from the perspective of the fact that you're the Whitefish City Council. And we have many plans in place that call for significant infrastructure improvements, which will take significant resources, and the type of retail expansion and commercial expansion that's proposed here. If that's approved, basically it's putting the city in a very difficult position. It's sort of like Highway 93 South to Highway 40 years ago. The city was put in a difficult position, and they ended up extending sewer out there, and that area proliferated. And the city's done a fair job of dealing with it, and it's come to sort of a point where there is a balance now. But an expansion such as this of retail and commercial south of Highway 40 would do it would essentially undermine the economic gains we've realized in Whitefish over the last 30 years. The other thing you really need to keep in mind is that in talking about all of these terms, you know, how would this work? Conditional use, businesses, services district, B2, that sort of thing. It's easy for you as council people to think about these in terms of when you're making the decision, the final decision, but the thing that you have to remember is whatever the decision the county makes, you won't make the final decision. The county will make the final decision. So if you think that a conditional use would be good because in your shoes you might, you know, not grant that conditional use, you're not going to have that luxury. It's not going to be in your hands. And for that reason, I would encourage you to oppose the proposed retail and commercial expansion south of Highway 40. From a resource and practical standpoint, it doesn't make sense for the city of Whitefish to do that. There are a lot of things in place that the city should continue to move forward on. You have a district court ruling that, you know, supports taking a hard stand on this. Because we've seen what's happened in other communities around the county when commercial expansion takes place like this. It's detrimental to the core of your community. It'll be detrimental to the B2 on Highway 93 South if this sort of expansion takes place. And you have to take all of that into account. So again, I'd ask you to oppose this. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Further public testimony? Rhonda. And then we're going to need to take a short break.
Hi again, Rhonda Fitzgerald, 412 Lupfer. Several people have said it, and I would just reiterate that I hope that you, as a council, will direct the planning staff to take a pretty firm position that Whitefish has many, many plans adopted. The community has come forward over and over again and spoken to their vision for the community. I brought visual aids, the growth policy, which says that we won't expand commercial and retail south of 93. We have 2 downtown master plans that say that the central business district is our commercial core. We have the new 93 West plan, which expands commercial and retail quite a lot. It's a fairly large geographic area. And the Wisconsin Corridor Plan is obviously going to bring more commercial and retail forward. And so we have a small community with a lot of commercially zoned property, way more than we can fill up, frankly, in our lifetimes or my children's lifetimes. We just are disproportionately overweighted with places to put businesses. And this creates a problem. And the nature of highway sprawl is that something will always go further out to a cheaper place and abandon something closer in. And we see that right in our own community. We have the first sprawly businesses that are almost derelict. We have the old Army Navy, which was before that Western building. You know, it's this leapfrog sprawling that happens, and it's very, very hard to resuscitate the first sprawly place while the activity is in the next sprawly place, and then you get a third sprawly place. And so the further south we go with this cancer, the more problems we will have closer in, because how long has Western Building been vacant? 15 years? Army Navy? Right now we have the whole hospital property. We have all those professional offices that were the campus around the hospital that are half full. We keep allowing things to go further and further south, and it's not good for our community. And it's not just happening to us, this happens all over the country. And even the county master plan says that our communities should have integrity, that they should not be linked by commercial corridors, creating one large sort of ex-urban mass. And I think that that's also an important thing for you to point out in your letter to the county. We really need to be stewards of our community and envision what we will look like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because we're not going to be able to fill up all this commercial and retail land in our community that we already have. And it would be really tragic to just sprawl all the way to Kalispell. I don't think it would, I don't think the people who want to live here want to see it, and I know it would be very, very bad for the businesses that we have here, because they're all based pretty much on sense of place. So I hope we have a sense of place. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Further public comment tonight on this item? Going once, twice. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we're going to take about a 7-minute break, stretch our legs. Thanks. So we did close our public hearing on the property owner initiated Highway 93 South Whitefish Corridor Plan and Zoning Amendment proposal, and we're going to turn it back to the council for discussion. And saw Jen's hand first, and then Andy.
Try to make this as coherent as possible. I want to thank Phil, the county commissioner, and Dean, our county planning board member, for attending tonight, listening to the comments. I think that's very helpful and nice to be able to carry along throughout the process. Fun fact for the night, this morning, or earlier in our meeting today, we were discussing affordable housing and affordable workforce housing at that, and our shortage of property within Whitefish that accommodates for that workforce. And an interesting fact that came out of that was 56% of the employees that work within Whitefish commute to Whitefish. 56% of our workers commute into Whitefish. So I think it's important to consider the traffic that runs through this corridor, just as well as those folks that live here and are concerned with the growth of that area, and how those commuters are impacted to get from one community to another. I think our standard of living, as it correlates to our ease of transportation and the safety by which we can get around the valley, should also be considered. I do think that it's important in the comments from the city that we try to best articulate all the things that we've heard here tonight. This is the process by which the citizens in this area are presenting a plan to the county is the process that should be followed. But as a community, and especially one that neighbors this area so directly, you know, we also have a say in what happens and how that affects our community. So let's make sure that as much as the city responds now to this plan, to the county, that it's important for the public to continue to make comments to the county and to participate in the process of developing this plan. I do think that it's important also for the county to consider, well, the owners in this area are wanting to develop their property and are wanting to have increased value and opportunity. I think it's also important to consider the impact it has on Whitefish businesses. As I just said, 56% of those that work in Whitefish are commuting into our community. And that affects businesses. If they are no longer able to commute, then the businesses within town aren't able to operate, and that's a detrimental impact to our community. It also forces businesses to the outside edges of our town and forces services further out. And as we've stated many times before, we're not going to extend beyond Highway 9 or beyond Highway 40 south. So I think that it's important for the county to realize it's not just the businesses in that area that are affected, it's businesses in our whole community in our valley. And so I hope that that's a part of the comments that go to the county as well. With that said, Dave, I hope you took notes tonight. There were a lot of comments. If not, I took a lot of notes. I'd be happy to share them with you. In addition, and I'll mention it later tonight in councilor comments, I'd like to get that 93 South Corridor study going to the extent that we can now within the city, doing it within city limits, but it'd be great if the county were on board and wanted to go with us, because that is next on our priority list. So I'll mention it later on, but that 93 Corridor South study has to happen.
Thanks, Jen. Andy.
Jen and I must be on the same wavelength tonight, because I thought the same thing, and it's one of the things that occurred to me, and I think it's what we need to consider, both us and the county, is it's not just changing zoning for a few property owners. It does affect everybody in the valley. And Jen's point of the 56% of the people that work in Whitefish commute here, of that specifically 1,615 come from Kalispell every day. That's 3,230 vehicle trips per day. Now we start looking at, okay, we're going to lower the speed limit for the 1.5 miles, and then we're going to put in a couple of stoplights, and then pretty soon we're going to see a proliferation of a little more zoning just to further south of that, and then there's another stoplight, and pretty soon we start adding 30 to 45 minutes a day, or an hour possibly, to everybody's commute that's coming up here. That's 1,615 people that live in this valley. That's probably an extra hour or two of childcare a day, possibly. So while those property owners all think it's like, well, this is impacting me negatively, by changing those kinds of things, we impact everybody in this valley negatively. And I think that's what we have to look at. It's not just la-di-da, we're going to change the zoning and everything's going to be fine and dandy. My guess is, with the exception of Wade, every person out there, when they bought their property, it was zoned as it is today. Because there's probably not too many people that have owned it longer than he has. That's pretty much my guess. I've lived around here longer than probably just about everybody in this room. And I remember when the last thing north of Kalispell was the Sunset Drive-In, which, anybody out there remember the Sunset Drive-In? There's a couple of people that do. That was where the hospital was at. You know, you could go from downtown Kalispell to Whitefish in 15 minutes in those days. That's how quickly those things change. And I went to high school a long time ago. So I think that's one of the biggest considerations we're looking at here. It's not just these people wanting to gain value for their property, and it's not us looking at it as it's not already kind of a commercial strip to begin with. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of businesses out there. We all realize that. But one thing, and when we did the Highway 93 EIS in 1991, we realized we had one corridor north-south in this valley, and that's all we were probably ever going to get. And we're quickly watching that turn into an hour-and-a-half commute back and forth as we see commercial proliferation. So I guess my point is that I would hope that the county understands that it's going to negatively impact a lot of people, and it can positively impact people too. And I would kind of like to extend the olive branch and say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us to sit down at the table again and plan collectively and look at what's best for the county, look at what's best for the residents, and look at what's best for Whitefish. Because I think that's, at the end of the day, yeah, we don't have a say. I mean, we hope to have a seat at the table, and we hope that our comments are heard, and we hope that our wishes and our desires for what we want to have happen for our community. Because the other reality is, for us to see additional commercial proliferation down there, it's not good for Whitefish. We know that. It impacts our downtown businesses that have paid more for their property, and then to have somebody go out and pay less for their property, it creates unfair competition. I mean, that's the way those things work. And so I guess I would just hope that, you know, one, Dave heard what we had to say, and that the county doesn't react too quickly and allows us all to sit down and come up with a solution that serves us all.
Thank you, Andy. Further comments from the council? Richard.
I would like to see us along those same lines as Andy and Jen have outlined, to see if there isn't an opportunity for some joint meetings between the city planning, maybe with a counselor or two involved, and the county planning board to maybe see if we can't work on some of these issues. I think that while comments have been made that this has been in process since 2009, I don't think that there is this huge rush for some kind of a plan that may not fully get to some compromise or some way to find some equity between those who are in the county residents and county landowners, and those who are in the city. And so I hope that we can find a way. You mentioned an olive branch. I remember at the planning board, Ollie Netterberg saying something about, you know, we're extending the olive branch, and I mentioned then that I hope that the city and the county can work together and make the olives grow on the olive branch and take advantage of it.
Dave, do you need specific direction tonight from the council in terms of what to include in your letter, or do you have a pretty good understanding from the comments you heard from the council as well as the public what those need to be?
Yeah, I mean, certainly whatever comments that we give the county are going to go on the record. The planning board is going to consider that. I mean, there's a limited amount of time to get them information. That'll go in the packets.
What's the deadline for that information?
Mark said right before Christmas. I think it's 15 days before their hearing, which is the 11th of January. So, but yeah, I mean, the more direction, the better as far as crafting something to them. If you have some specific things that you want me to include, a specific direction, that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay,
so
you would
sort
like
of a scatter shot thing of.
You'd like those itemized this evening from the council as
if
best
you guys
as
could
possible?
agree on some direction, more. I mean, obviously the desire, it's going to be up to the county planning board whether they want to. Mark Mussman mentioned that they may, postpone they're going to hold a public hearing, but they may ask to do a workshop after that. I mean, I don't know what. It's really going to be up to that county planning board to decide how to proceed once they have it on their plate. So.
Okay.
Not sure, it's really up to them on the timeline, but we can ask for a joint meeting. We could ask for, continuance to get more stakeholder input and things like that. But also, in addition to that, there may be some other things that we certainly want to bring our concerns up with regard to the commercial proliferation and things like that. So,
well, in the spirit of trying to keep this moving here tonight, I guess I had a short bullet list from our work session 2 weeks ago. I'll start. And if I miss anything or you'd like to add something for Dave to incorporate, please just chime in because it's getting late. The first being the width of the business service district extents. I think the comments were generally related to trying to narrow that width up to the properties that front Highway 93 south. Both the east and I think particularly the west side, and particularly because of the potential impacts to Emerald Heights. I believe at our work session, the council expressed some concern about the extension of services south of Highway 40 until such time that we update our extension of services plan along with our urban growth boundary, which we discussed 2 weeks ago at our work session. I think generally concerns related to the expansion of both commercial and retail uses, even ancillary uses as they relate to our adopted growth policy, our downtown master plan, our 93 West plan, as well as the upcoming Wisconsin Avenue plan, and acknowledging those planning documents and the existing capacity we have built into our downtown business core. Those are the main items I had for my list, and I guess I would open it up for other suggestions from the council. But one thing I wanted to say, Phil, is I'm not going to repeat what Andy said and what Richard said, but I know when you and I sat on council together and we were going through this donut issue, I think you and I shared something in common, and that was that our biggest concern was related to lake water quality in our gateways and our commercial corridors coming into town, and that you care deeply about those. And I really mean this, and I know my councilors do as well, that we would like to sit down with the commission and with these property owners to come up with a solution that meets our needs, their needs, and the county's needs. And I hope that you can bring that message back to the county commissioners because we mean it. Other items?
John, you didn't really talk too much about transportation issues.
Okay,
and I think that transportation issues need to be on there, on your list. And I would hope that and I'm happy to help, at least to review, but that anything that Dave you come up with, we have a chance to review as members of council and kind of give some kind of a nod one way or the other to your response. I would hope that maybe the county would step back just a little bit in the planning section and think about maybe a workshop and then a hearing, rather than a hearing and then a workshop, and kind of put that in a little bit different order so that we could have a full and open airing of everyone's concerns, and then go into the more formal public hearing phase with the county planning board. And that would do several things. One is it takes a little pressure away from the holiday crunch. Number two, I think it will help involve many of the people who were here tonight that might otherwise be reluctant to come to yet another hearing, but if they could maybe kind of get some input into a workshop before a hearing, it might improve the amount of public input.
Thanks, Richard. Anything else to add to the letter? Jen?
I would just try to add in the economic impact that it has to businesses and commuters, both in and outside of Whitefish, countywide. And then as well, I just wanted to mention, I didn't mention earlier, Leo Keene had a great comment tonight about the gateways to Kalispell and how frustrating those gateways are. And I think that if we all work just a little bit harder on this particular gateway, I think we could be a beacon for what can and should happen in communities in the valley. And so I would just like to urge everyone to spend a little extra time trying to get it right.
Thanks, Jen. Further direction to Dave Taylor. Phil, I'd like to thank you for coming, Dean as well, and we hope to see you again more, and we'll certainly make visits down to Kalispell as well. So thanks again. We're going to go ahead and move on to what will be our own resolution. Now it will be 16-62, a resolution approving an increase in ambulance fees currently charged by the Whitefish Fire Department. And Tom, are you going to handle this, or Joe? Okay.
Come on, Phil.
You've been through this before.
Mayor, council members, we have before you a resolution to increase the ambulance service rates. This will be the first increase for the residents since 2008 and for non-residents since 2012. As you're aware in your budget preparations, it's necessary to additionally fund the EMS services here to the tune of almost $179,000 a year with additional property tax support. What we tried to do in the analysis is look at different funding options through the service fees that we charge to mitigate that, either eliminate it totally or to minimize it as much as we could at the time. As you're aware, we have a basic infrastructure cost to the ambulance service. It runs about $720,000 a year. That cost is there whether we have one ambulance call or we have, as we do, about 1,400 ambulance calls a year. The additional $1.2 million in cost is based on demand. And as brought up earlier, we have resident, non-resident. Our ambulance area covers substantially, when you take in the county area that we cover outside of the Whitefish service area, about 120 square miles, primarily to the northwest. About 1/3 of those calls are actually in the rural fire service area, not the other way around. Non-resident calls within the city and resident calls are about half and half. In 2012, we came before the council and we wanted to try and mitigate a little bit the differential that the property tax owners had a greater share of the burden of paying for this EMS service than a non-resident. So at that time is when you approve the non-resident fee. Interesting fact is that we were the first agency in the county to do that, and currently almost, I think, 90% of the other agencies have followed suit and have a non-resident charge now in place. So we were kind of the leader in that area, and people have followed us. In our analysis, we looked at we provided you with 3 spreadsheets that showed the budget, service fees. We had another analysis that had a service fee charge that provided a fee structure that recaptured that whole $179,000. That was a pretty substantial hike. And then we had what we call the competitive analysis. And what we did is we looked at the other agencies in the Flathead area and looked at what they were charging. The closest, and it's pointed out in the analysis, the closest organization is Kalispell Fire in their structure to ours and the way they operate. Their career fire department, they provide paramedic service on all their ambulances and fire trucks just as we do. And their rates were the basis of where we started to see what we could do with a competitive rate. Smith Valley Fire is also at the same rate, and those are the 2 that we mimicked in this study then to see where we could come with a rate that was fair and equitable, but yet recaptured some of that tax money that we were having to pay. And if you go through the analysis, you'll see that with this rate increase, we're looking at recapturing all but about, excuse me, $47,000 of that. I used to be able to read that without these. So I think, in a way, we've mitigated and we've brought our rates up to a reasonable rate. One of the things that I thought about after I put the study together, and Chuck is well aware of, is that we had the SAFER grant that started in 2008, and we were able to put on the 6 firefighters, and we hired 1 more. We put a total of 7 firefighters on. That grant went away over a period of 5 years, and it's completely gone now. So while the 24 mills was passed in 2008, came into effect in 2008, we haven't had any adjustment to that. So we've had increased personnel costs that in the early years we weren't seeing the full effect of until we've hit here in this period. So as you see in the study, both the infrastructure and the demand costs, the personnel costs are a substantial portion of what we're paying. What we're asking, again, is a fairly steep increase, but I think if you look at it and you look at Schedule N, which is the CPI for the last 10 years, and you look at what the rate would be spread over if we had been increasing each year, it's a reasonable rate. Again, it brings us into a competitive area. It helps capture some of the costs. I know in the budget, Chief Page has a new ambulance coming in. Again, the debt service costs will go up in the future. The ambulances get a lot of use. It's amazing how much mileage are put on those just in transporting patients back and forth, even within the city limits. So that service is there unless we have some extra cash to buy a $275,000 ambulance. One of the things we thought we'd mimic Kalispell in using the CPI for medical supplies to try and in the future for the next in working with Dana, we decided that for the next 2 years or 3. It's pretty late. Anyway, until through 2019 is automatically raise the rates based on the CPI on July 1st to try and recapture and keep up with the current costs that we're seeing. So that is part of the resolution. That's a new theory. Kalispell implemented a year ago. It's been very successful. It's kept their budget pretty stable. One of the other things that we found in doing the analysis and talking with our outside billing organization was that we were able to recapture some of the costs that we weren't aware of that we could recapture. Oxygen supplies, some of the other ambulance supplies that we're using can be billed back, and insurance companies will reimburse for those, and Medicare. So we don't have an historical database to give you an exact figure what that recapture will be at this time, but we think that'll help obviously mitigate a portion of that $47,000 that is still tax funded. So I think that it's a pretty good overview of what we're trying to do. Available for any questions.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions for Tom? Richard?
Yeah, I have a question. Under on table 3 on page 449, it's demand expenditures FY17 budget. Professional and contract services, what would be included in that? And then I have one more after that.
The 42,000.
49,986.
Okay. Professional contract services includes all the outside repair costs for the fire trucks, excuse me, for the ambulances. It includes the costs for the 911's in there. Administrative, I believe, no, that's a separate line, sorry. So, it's also, yeah, billing.
Okay. And then rescue care benefits, what are those?
The rescue care benefits are part of the rescue care program where residents within the service area pay a flat fee, $59 in the city or $79 outside the city. And we bill the insurance company. If there's anything left, it's automatically written off. So,
so that write-off is 10,000? Is that what you're saying about?
That's estimated.
Thanks.
Further questions? Not seeing any. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the report. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be our own Resolution 16-62 regarding ambulance fees. Anyone wishing to provide comment, name and address for the record, please. Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period and turn it back to Richard for a motion.
Yeah, I have a question for Tom, though. Don't run away, Tom. If we had, I think you alluded to that, but I just want some clarification. If we had been doing this beginning in 2008, would we not be in this pickle about having to make up?
If we had been adjusting each year, we would have probably come before the board, or if it's an automatic adjustment like we're asking, we would have just been adjusting for probably a CPI.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go ahead and make a motion then, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and that is to approve Resolution 16-62, approving an increase in ambulance fees currently charged by the Whitefish Fire Department.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Seconded by Katie. Further discussion? All those in favor? Chuck?
I just wanted to point out a couple things. On page 457 of your packet, their recommendation is this competitive resident fees line and competitive non-resident fees line. Really basically the way our resident system works is we charge the full cost, and then if the clerk's office can determine that they're a local property owner or resident through various methods, then we deduct some off of it. But the second column that says full recovery fees, resident full recovery fees, I had Tom and Dana and Joe work on that because they're not recommending, they're recommending this competitive resident fees, which is lower than the full recovery. If you wanted to eliminate all the property tax subsidy beyond the allocation of the 24 mills, you know, the 24 mills is a given, but we do subsidize ambulance further, you'd have to adopt these fees. But as he said, they're going with the next page, which is the competitive analysis, where he said they just basically want to match Kalispell and Smith Valley with the same 945, 51, etc. And that's fine. I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of that, that at their recommendation that's in the resolution, you will still be subsidizing ambulance a little bit beyond the 24 mills. And of course, that page 457, it does have this column that says if that percentage were spread over 8 years, it looks like it would have averaged 4.4 or 4.2. I recognize that this is a big increase all at once, but I think the citizens, you can also tell the citizens that they've saved them these increases for 8 years, so that as ambulance users, you've kept the cost low, albeit with a property tax subsidy. So it does seem large, 35% rate increases, but as Tom alluded, on residents, it hasn't been increased since 2008. So they've saved quite a bit of money during that time for themselves.
Thanks, Chuck. Jen?
I think it's quite unfortunate that we're in this situation, that we haven't been planning better in the past. And unfortunately, the city taxpayers continue to pay higher costs for medical services as medical costs continue to rise throughout the country at extraordinary rates. I also find it frustrating that we are basing our rates on competitive rates. When we call for an ambulance, we don't get to decide which ambulance comes to pick us up. We don't get to decide which doctor serves us. So I would just like to caution as we move forward that we are using every tool possible to bring our costs down and to be responsible to the citizens of Whitefish for all of the services that we provide.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Joe. We'll move on to item 7D, which is our own resolution 16-64, establishing initial rates charged for leased parking spaces in the new Whitefish parking structure.
The resolution is on page 474, and I've got a staff report right after that. I'll make it pretty quick. If you look at on page 474, the chart in section 1 is basically the decisions you've made previously in work sessions, given the direction, excuse me, not decisions, but the direction you've given staff in prior work sessions. The two aspects that I'll point out here for you. The top of the chart, we added that from opening day through Sunday, April 30th. So whenever we can open in April next year, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 3 weeks, we would give the citizens as a thank you for all the construction and traffic delays and detours and just the problems that constructing such a big project do. Free unlimited use. They could come in there all day long, park for 8 hours if they wanted to. For that first month, it's a slow shoulder season. It's an incentive to go in there and use the parking structure, get people into it, experiencing it, and using it. And I don't think we would sacrifice much. So that's a change. If you want to take that out, you can certainly take that out, and we could start in with leases from day one. But I thought that was a nice gesture to our citizens. The bottom of that chart, we're stating that payments are not refundable, but people may sell or transfer their lease by just changing the license plates that are assigned to the parking space. We tend to think that if we go with this automated online billing system, and that decision's not been made yet, but it would just be very difficult with people coming in wanting to, if they signed up for a month, they want to prorate it by only half a month or 15 days, or if they signed up for a year and got the bulk discount or the time discount, then they wanted to come in and say, I want a 6-month refund. So that's the policy that we're proposing. If you wanted to change it, we could certainly handle refund, but we thought it was best by letting them sell it to their business or sell it to another employee rather than us having to do refunds. Those are the sort of two proposals that we put in here that weren't discussed previously.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Questions for Chuck before we hold a public hearing? Frank.
Have we thought through the concept of creating what I'll call a secondary market as a result of taking that kind of a stance?
I don't know that the repercussions are terrible. I think we'd get a little pushback from citizens who, couldn't get a refund. But there's secondary markets for a lot of things in this world. eBay and Craigslist are very busy places these days.
We did advertise for a public hearing on our own ordinance 16-63. We'll hold that hearing now. Anyone wishing to provide comment, name and address for the record? Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to council for a motion. Andy.
I move that we approve resolution 16-63.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous. Michelle. Thanks, Chuck. You have Chuck's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Chuck from the council? Chuck, any additional items to report on?
No.
Okay. I have one reminder, and that is of the Salvation Army bell ringing, which is again on December 15th from 10 to 6, and you have your assignments. Does everyone remember their time slot? No? Okay, so we have myself and Frank from 10 to 12, Pam and Katie from 12 to 2, Jen and Richard from 2 to 4, and Chuck and a question mark from 4 to 6. Maybe Rita.
Well, she helped last year. Dana's threatening to.
Dana can help. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll move on to item 8C, resolution number 16-61, a resolution relating to $779,000 special improvement district bonds, series 2017, fixing the form and details and providing for the execution and delivery thereof and security thereof.
So the resolution appears on page 488. I'm going to briefly work off of my staff report, which is on page 518. These bond resolutions are always very long. They include a lot of legal terms and legal conditions. We tried to point out the biggest ones to you. Again, this is the final step that the City Council will take in issuing Special Improvement District number 167, which is the downtown area around the parking structure. And it was a way to have the businesses, as the council said at the time, have some more skin in the game for the parking structure payments instead of just the tax increment people who pay. The size of the bond is on page 519. Excuse me. When we priced the bonds last week, on November 29th, we got bond rate from the banks of 4.36%. We do, by state law, have to add a 0.5% to that when we do the assessments. That 0.5% surcharge used to be optional, but the state legislature a number of years ago made it mandatory, and that's to provide extra security for the bondholders in case of delinquencies, so that the property tax payers of Whitefish or other cities wouldn't be left holding the responsibility. So it's another little safety net for delinquencies. Again, we found that the delinquencies in this area were very small. I think there were 3, I put in my report, I think 3 out of the 190 properties last year had delinquencies on them, which is extremely minuscule. So, you know, I've got a typo in there. I said the rate will be 4.86%, but I'm sorry, the rate we pay the banks will be 4.36%, and the rate that we charge and assess to the people will be 4.86%. We had told the people a year ago that we hoped to issue and assess them at less than 4.5%. What we found is that interest rates went up after the election by about 0.6%, and that was obviously something that we couldn't adjust for. I mean, it's beyond our control for those sorts of things. On page 520, I just point out a few other things that you should be aware of in the resolution. On page 9 of the bond resolution, in section 3.04, you agree to loan money from the SID revolving fund, which is a backup security fund, to cover funds for any delinquencies to make the scheduled semi-annual payments to the banks. On page 10, you actually covenant and agree and pledge to make a property tax levy to the SID revolving fund if necessary to cover delinquencies. This pledge is made even if you had to reduce other mill levies like the general all-purpose mill levy in order to do so. It used to be in Montana state law that you had a maximum of 7 mills per year that you had to levy, and I think that levy or this pledge is now unlimited. So we would not be recommending SIDs in sort of risky districts where you have a lot of vacant land, but as I said, 3 of the original 194 properties last year had delinquencies, so we feel this is a very, very safe SID. In section 4.06 on page 12, you pledge not to waive the penalty or interest on any delinquent assessments. So those are just things that we have to remember as time goes along. The rest of the bond issue is pretty standard bond language, but it is involved and complicated, and we hope you had the chance to review it. If there's any questions on any of those aspects, I can try to answer them.
Thanks, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck? Can I have a motion, please?
Sure. There seems to be a little reluctance there. I'll move to approve Resolution 1661, a resolution relating to 779,000 Special Improvement District bonds. Series 2017, fixing the form and details and providing for the execution and delivery thereof and security therefore.
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, and that's unanimous as well. Michelle, we did have a consent item agenda pulled from the consent agenda. That was item 6C, and that's scheduled next for discussion. Andy, since you pulled that from the consent agenda, would you like to address that, please?
Yeah, I just would like to table that until January 3rd or our 17th meeting. So the second meeting in January, just to give staff a little time to go ahead and take a look at the properties and make sure that we meet the wholly surrounded test on all of them.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Thanks for sticking around. I know it was a late evening. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 9A. We do have a letter from Robert Wallstad regarding recent water and sewer rate increases. Any comment on that letter? Frank.
Chuck, have we looked at, does he not qualify for a discount, given his description of fixed income? and I assume he's of an age that he would qualify. Has it been pointed out to him?
Well, I presume it's been pointed out to him. We can certainly have Craig and utility billing follow up with him. If you remember the change that you did, you took it away from solely an age-based discount to a means test income. So certainly in the utility billing people were giving a lot of information on the LEAP or Low Income Energy Assistance Program requirements. It is a little bit more involved than it used to be. You just qualified by your age, and now you have to do an application and show your income statement or your tax statement and your resources. So it is a little more involved. So I presume utility billing, if he called, has let him know, but we could have Craig follow up with Mr. Wallstad. You know, the problem was the people who received the elderly discount received a 75% discount on their fixed base. So it is true that if he doesn't use much water, he would see a large increase, because if you just say it was $100 or 100 was the basis, 75% discount would go down to 25. Then when you take 25 up to 100, that's a 300% increase. So Craig has looked at this and said, yeah, that's kind of what happened. He also is in an area, I think, that has 1 or 2 pumping zones to it, which does add to the cost as well. But anytime you take away a 75% discount on the fixed base, it's going to increase it significantly. But we can follow up with Mr. Wallstad and make sure he knows of the LEAP program.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Craig. We'll move on to item 9B, Resolution 16-65, establishing the Whitefish Climate Action Plan Committee. Thanks to Pam for pulling this together with Angie and Richard, and we'll need Michelle.
I think it'll be 1664 since we didn't do a resolution number for annexation.
Thanks, Michelle. So we will need a motion establishing this committee. Pam.
I move to approve Resolution 16-64, a resolution establishing the Whitefish Climate Action Plan Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous. And we need to consider reappointing Craig for another term.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, can we get this all done in 6 minutes?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll make a motion.
You can make a motion reappointing Craig if you'd like.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Craig.
And I'll second that motion.
Further discussion on the motion?
Have fun.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous as well, Michelle. And in terms of the appointments not made this evening, we did appoint Becky Forbes to the Whitefish Housing Authority as a resident of Mountain View Manor. I'll go ahead and make the remaining 3 mayoral appointments. They'll need to be ratified by the council, but I'll go ahead and appoint or recommend appointment of Judy Hesseland and Rebecca Norton to the planning board. And that needs to be ratified by the council.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous. And then finally, I will appoint Patrick Nagel to the Whitefish Housing Authority as a city resident located within a 10-mile radius of the city. And I'll need a ratification of that appointment as well.
I'd move to ratify.
Second.
All those in favor? And that's unanimous as well, Michelle. And we'll move on to councilor comments, and we'll start with Pam.
I did want to thank everybody for their public participation tonight, both in support of the proclamation and the county plan. So I'd like to remind everybody to continue their comments when the county planning board holds their hearing, which is January 11th. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Richard.
Just want to wish everybody a happy holidays.
Thank you. Katie?
I will echo the comments of the other two counselors. Have a great evening.
Jen?
I have a few things, but I'll try to keep it very brief. Tonight, Craig, we heard about the septic discharge into the sewer system. Hopefully we're looking at that, or if that's a possibility now, maybe we could do something about that. There was a part of the traffic plan on the Cottonwood subdivision that came back saying that the visibility on the intersection of Edgewood and Colorado on the northeast side of that intersection the visibility is declining. I would like to see if there's anything that we can do to increase that visibility in that area, if that's a city responsibility or whose responsibility that might be. The 7th Street LED lights, it sounds like we're looking at some possibilities for some not so bright LEDs going in there. Craig, is that correct?
Correct. We're working with the existing LEDs to try and reduce the wattage and dim them.
Awesome, thanks. And then the very last one, but maybe the biggest one, is I would like to move forward with a 93 South corridor study. I know that we've been talking about it for a very long time. I know that we have a lot on our plate, but I think it is imperative that we get the process started. So I would like, over the next month or two, to sit down with whoever it is that I need to sit down with and start drafting what it is that we would be looking for in a 93 South corridor study so that we can bring it back to the council and get the process started. That's all.
So perhaps the best way to move that forward would be if we do have a showing of hands, maybe we could have Dave at the first or second week in January bring back, I think you've already done this, kind of a framework for what that study may look like, and have it as an agenda item that we can discuss, during a regular meeting.
Fantastic.
If that's okay with you to give him a little flexibility on when he brings that back, given his workload. Showing of hands to that effect. And that's a good showing of hands. Anything more, Jen?
Nope, that's it for me.
Thanks. Frank?
A couple of things. I would like to endorse what Jan has requested, and David, it might also, the fact that we have now raised that issue again, and we now have some commitment to moving forward with it, maybe that would give the commissioners and the county planning board some encouragement, and the homeowners in the 93 South corridor that are asking us to deal with their plan, to understand that we will move forward. We won't be wasting any more time. It might give us a little more, or give them a little more assurance that we're not going to sit on it, and that they might participate with us in a collective plan as opposed to trying to do it piecemeal like they are. Again, I want to thank the community for coming out this evening for our proclamation. I think it was important. I think it's given the ties that have been made between some of the white supremacists and the alt-right. I think we need to make it clear that this community does not countenance, or to put it in a little different term, we will not tolerate the intolerant. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Andy?
Just quickly, I want to remind the public meet and greet on the 15th for city manager candidates. I apologize and I'm disappointed I don't get to be here. Unfortunately, I do have to go to work sometimes. And the next time we all get together, resolutions and ordinances will start with 17. So there you go.
That we will. And I think Andy and I will both be gone from the first meeting in January, but carry on, and we'll see you at the second meeting, and happy holidays, everyone. We are adjourned.
Oh, a minute and a half.